Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto and Shikamaru become Chunin part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Brilliant. That's how one would define the epic battle Naruto had won against Gaara and the Shikaku. Many had failed, and even 2 rounds of Sasuke's new jutsu, the Chidori, weren't enough, but somehow, the dead last had managed to do it. Of course, using Kakashi's 1000 years of pain with an explosive kunai was kind of inappropriate. There was also the fact that he miserably failed to summon Gamabunta on his first try. And being bossed around by your summon is kind of pathetic. Okay. Well, maybe that battle wasn't as brilliant as one would think. For a genin, it was a fight against impossible odds, and Naruto had prevailed magnificently in a way. Of course, in the end it was a team effort. Naruto would have never had a chance against the Tanuki demon if it wasn't for Sasuke weakening Gaara or Sakura's bravery giving him the fire needed to fight back. And after that intense battle they all needed some well-deserved rest and intensive care. Getting through that experience alive was as difficult as actually defeating Gaara, and so Team 7 had been rushed to a nearby hospital soon after. Sasuke had needed some of his wounds treated, but the most important matter was the curse seal acting up. Sakura had been the most injured. Fortunately, she would be permitted to leave the hospital the next day. Naruto had fought with all his might, way past exhaustion, and only needed to rest, and that's about all he did 2 days straight. It seemed both Sakura and Sasuke wanted to do the same, but they were constantly interrupted by visits. Though they were good-natured, the visitors had the knack of picking the wrong time to intrude. For example, Ino systematically visited Sasuke every 2 hours, from the start of visiting hours to the end, sometimes accompanied by her teammates, other times with some fellow fans of the Uchiha survivor, but most of the time alone. This had the effect of preventing Sasuke from getting the rest he required. When she had finished in the Uchiha's room, she would go and see her friend and rival, bedridden only a few doors down the hall. But she wasn't alone in her visits. Rock Lee popped in with his crutches from time to time, vowing his eternal love and speaking of the miracle recovery he would soon have thanks to the marvelous wonders of the springtime of youth. Of course there was Kakashi, who'd go from one room to another, that is, when he wasn't sent on an urgent A-class mission. They even had a team visit from Team 8 at one point. Although it was short, it reflected the camaraderie of the Konoha genin. Though those visits were somewhat unpleasant, Sakura had welcomed them. She needed some company, and hungered for any bits of news she could get on Sasuke's condition. Even Rock Lee had to at least pass a few minutes with her teammate to be graced with permission to enter the Kunoichi's room. Each of her visitors had to spend time describing Sasuke's condition and reassure her of his well-being before even thinking of asking about hers. She had been so worried about her beloved that she forgot ever having a third team member while she was hospitalized. Sasuke, however, did remember Naruto, and was troubled by the fact that during his time spent recovering, 2 people had secretly asked him about Naruto's whereabouts. Shikamaru had quietly raised the question while Ino was mindlessly rambling, informing him that while his room and Sakura's were only a short distance apart, Naruto's wasn't even on the same floor. As for Hinata, though she didn't seem to insist, her worried eyes told her story. Even the nurses he asked didn't know where the blonde was. It seemed Naruto had been awarded some sort of special treatment. Unfortunately for Naruto and himself, Sasuke drew the wrong conclusions from those facts. He thought that since the blonde had played such an essential part in the Gaara affair, he had been hailed as a hero and was being treated as such. And since an Uchiha can never be wrong, this only served to make his mood that much more bitter. The poor fox brat would have gladly argued with him about his condition, only he wasn't even awake to realize what was happening to him. While Sakura, Sasuke and the rest of the injured Konoha shinobi were treated with much care, Naruto had been practically left for dead in the quarantine section of the building. Nobody even entered his room to see if he was alive, save for Kakashi who, using Henge to move around as a doctor in the scarce time he could visit Team 7, would check to see how his recovery was coming along. He had no complaints. Thanks to the demon fox, the blonde had mostly recovered from his more serious wounds after a day spent resting. It amazed him that with so little treatment, Naruto would likely already be out trying to train in some way or another. Every time he thought about it, he would sigh. He wished that somehow Jiraiya had stayed in town during this whole mess. Things would have been so different. But he'd quickly shrug his mood away. Besides the third, there were no major casualties. And seeing how the new recruits had behaved, he was sure that the will of fire had been passed on and that a bright future was ahead of them. On the second day, Sakura and Sasuke were released from the hospital. Both were glad to leave. The pink head could finally see Sasuke and thank him for saving her life. As for Sasuke, he decided that he'd have a little talk with Naruto about the recent events. But they were quickly summoned to get changed in order to attend the funeral service of the third. Both hurried to their respective homes, knowing that they would soon find the person they were looking for at the gravesite. In fact, they'd be surprised if even one person wasn't at the funeral service. Naruto himself wouldn't even dream of missing this service, not only to support his so-called pupil, but also because he had a great respect for the third, since he was the second person to ever acknowledge him. He would be rushing there if it wasn't for the fact that he was currently sleeping in his hospital room, having no idea what was happening outside. It seemed he was bound to miss the funeral. While thinking about the fight between Team 7 versus Gaara, people seemed to forget about one major asset that aided them in their victory. If not for this person, the Fox host and his teammate wouldn't have had time to save Sasuke, because they would have to deal with intensive interference. Most would think of Shino, but all had recognized his abilities when he faced Kankuro of the Sand siblings. Though his performance hadn't been flawless, it was enough to ensure the puppet master couldn't fight anymore, and it had caused Shino much unwanted attention from admirers and other ninjas. Yet Naruto and Sakura wouldn't have probably reached the infamous Genin himself if they had to fight their way through the sound Chunin in the way. The one responsible for that part of the job was currently walking home. If possible, his usual scowl had gotten uglier. At this moment, he found his current situation more than troublesome. It was justified when he reviewed his heroic actions that day. He technically lost to a woman, though to everybody else, including said woman, his win was undeniable. He had somehow used a gen just to counter when he could have easily taken a peaceful, albeit forced nap. He had to accompany Naruto, Sakura and a dog that kept on biting him. He still didn't understand that soft and bouncy rubbish. He had played the good guy and used a mass shadow bind technique to stall some Chunin that were after them. Then he finally got saved from those same shinobi by his leader, Asuma. These were no ordinary feats, especially for a lazy guy like him, yet Shikamaru found all his accomplishments pathetic. Team 7 had easily done more than he did. Sasuke acted like the genius he had always been, shocking everyone with his newfound speed and jutsu. Naruto, the dead last he had classed as hopeless idiot since the academy days, had far outclassed his expectations. Even Shino outshined him that day, for he had done just as much, if not more, than the Nara. But even if these people and their actions had put his own to shame, that wasn't what really made him bitter right now. In fact, he couldn't have cared less what happened these last days, save the death of the honorable third. What irked him above all else was the relation between those events and the meeting he just left. Earlier that day, Shikamaru had been rudely woken up by his father. This was one heck of a surprise, considering his father's laziness was even more renowned than his own. The Nara heir inquired about this particular event, and received a scroll as his answer. Said scroll was a call to a special meeting discussing his recent actions in the Chunin exam. Judging by his father's stern look, this wasn't something he could easily dismiss, which was troublesome. Of course, to make the matters worse, this meeting was to be held shortly before the funeral, in about 3 hours, barely leaving the gen in time to get ready. He also asked his dad about the nature of the meeting, but his father pretended he didn't hear him while mumbling something about how kids growing too fast were troublesome. The atmosphere at the house had gotten that much eerier when breakfast came. It was a calm, quiet breakfast with no interruptions whatsoever. That itself meant something was up. The young Nara couldn't even remember a breakfast without his mother shouting over some poorly done chore, or his father's lateness, or the fact that the herd was acting crazy. This was usually followed by one of his father's sarcastic remarks, and before he knew it, he'd be running for his dear life, but not before his beloved mom had somehow forked over his share of daily tasks. So Shikamaru had every reason to be suspicious about his parents. "What's up?" he asked, but there was no satisfying answer. Instead, his mother couldn't stop smiling, giving him compliments here and there and talking about how he'd grown up. Now, there was definitely a reason to freak out. The sooner that meeting came, the better. And so the time of the meeting arrived. Shikamaru was now standing in a room he never dreamed existed inside of the Hokage Tower. The room was large and circular with as many seats as there were people around him at the moment, a lot. The seat in facing him was different from all the others. It was also empty, and the Nara easily figured out why. Around him were 30 or so elderly people. Here and there were also masked shinobi he could guess were from the Umbu. So many people for just one meeting, something is definitely up. So far his conclusion was that this was the Konoha Council, made of the heads of most of the clans. There were also many high politicians operating within the village, as well as ambassadors, and most of the village's S-ranked shinobi. Shikamaru quickly looked around and easily found what he was looking for, his father. Simple eye contact convinced him that his father was against this meeting for some reason. He soon understood why. "Members of the council, we are now gathered to discuss the promotion of the genin Nara Shikamaru." "What? What did they just say?" Shikamaru looked at his father for confirmation. Shikaka simply looked away disapprovingly. The man, who seemed to be the leader of the board, continued. "Considering the requirements of a Chunin, tactical skills, fast analysis and optimization of any situation, we consider this boy to be ready for the tasks at hand." "Hey, wait. Don't I have any say in this?" Of course, as suggested, we should have waited for the next Hokage, said the man without even acknowledging Shikamaru's presence. This particular course of action, however, is triggered by the critical lack of available Chunin at the moment. Don't ignore me! But Shikamaru quickly calmed down. Using force or rudeness was out of the question considering he'd be dead a dozen of times before even realizing what was happening. Let us hear the remarks of the members. He seems kind of young. This was said by one of the elderly which was seated not far from meeting's president. Thank you? Shouted Shikamaru in his mind. We had younger Chunin in time of war, said another behind him, and he has shown the potential to surpass many of them. His analytical skills were perfect. He also has a sense of responsibility. But I lost the fight, against a troublesome woman. Considering the resources he had, choosing to give up was the best solution in the eyes of many. Coming back from every mission half dead, like most of the fighters that day, would not be profitable. Shikamaru couldn't believe what he was hearing. People actually praised the fact that he deliberately chose to lose to the woman. Wasn't this supposed to be a test to gauge one's ability? Weren't the ninja of the upper level supposed to be cool and tackle any situation, like Kakashi or Asuma? Sasuke would be the best choice to promote to Chunin. He was a genius like himself, and actually had the skills to match his ego. Shino would have been another excellent choice as well, and unlike the Uchiha, he had more brain than brawn. Of course, when he voiced his opinions, they were shunned like the rest. Now, I suppose the father has something to say, since it is his son we are talking about. Shikamaru was all eyes on the man in question, hoping that his father's reluctance wasn't just a figment of his mind. Like I have said before, I don't think it's wise to let Nara Shikamaru become a Chunin yet. Though the need for Chunin is increasing due to the threat of a war, I think this matter can wait until the 5th Hokage has been found. It will also give him time to consider the importance of this event. Even if he was appointed Chunin as of now, all the teams available are complete, and any new made team would be mostly made of genin, which would render it ineffective. Shikamaru couldn't have been more grateful than in this moment. His father's reasoning was spot on. There was no way they'd let him be a Chunin after that. At least, it seemed so until the council president spoke once again. As usual, Shikako-san has quite the insight. However, this matter is much more urgent than you might think. Also, it is quite rare to have a Chunin selection exam without at least having one promotion. May I add that many have been promoted during war and most of those at a younger age than him? Surely you're only overreacting. I totally understand your concerns for the candidate. Don't worry. I assure you that like all of the other shinobi, Konoha will take care of him. The guy had basically shot down in flames any hope the young Nara had of getting out of the room still a genin. Since he had nothing better to do, he decided to take a closer look at the person so interested in his promotion. The man looked young, for one of the elders. Gauging by the wrinkles under his eyes and around his cheeks, the boy could give him 45, at most 50 years. The strands of silver streaking through his raven hair only confirmed his theory. His hair was long and tied behind his back in an elegant manner not unlike the Hyugas. He had a warm smile that could easily throw one off when trying to determine his character, but his eyes didn't lie. They were hazel-colored, cold, and calculating. They had nothing to do with his seemingly kind exterior. As Shikamaru burned the man's face in his memory, he felt something was odd in the way he worded that last sentence. Whatever it was would have to wait, because after that little answer, everybody started to praise him again. Really a prodigy. Sasuke is a better prodigy than I'll ever be. His skills are needed as a Chunin. Wait, Shino has more versatile skills than I have. He'll become a valuable asset. What about Niji? Come on. At least promote one of these guys with me. Then it's settled. Even Naruto would be a good candidate. At this mention, the whole room froze. It didn't take a genius to understand that the name wasn't welcomed here. He couldn't put his finger on the reason though. Naruto was too young to cause them any kind of grief. Besides, he was an orphan, so he posed no political threat of any kind. He supposed it may have had to do with his parents. Whatever it was, the tension finally became more bearable after a few seconds. The leader of the meeting made his voice heard once again. Before the vote, I think it would be wise to hear from one last person. Shikamaru was only half surprised when the leader of his team appeared out of nowhere. Asuma still looked as cool as ever. But his usual mood was quite somber today. He figured it was because of the funeral. He'd have to ask him about it, if he remembered. But now wasn't the time. He was sure he would have to hear his input on the situation. Indeed, who would be better suited to give an idea of Shikamaru's state than his mentor and leader? He has the skills, but I personally think he is not ready yet. It seemed that only the cool and smart people agreed with the lazy genin. Thank you. Remember to consider all that has been said before voting. Now, all that are in favor of promoting Naruto Shikamaru to the rank of Chunin may so declare by raising their right hand. Of course, a short moment later Shikamaru was welcomed to the upper ranks of the Konoha shinobi. He was bitter, but he had found a way to relieve some of that resentment. The honor I received today is great, but may I ask the council one more favor? Shikamaru took the lack of response as permission and continued. I'd like to know where Naruto is, if I may. There was a second silence, quickly destroyed by bursts of murmurs, which were in turn halted just as quickly by the president's cough. Though he simply inquired about the reason for the request, the look he gave the boy clearly meant he had gone too far and should drop the silly question. But the now newly promoted Chunin also thought they had pushed too far in trying to promote him, and that he should at least some kind of benefit from it. He voiced his concern for his teammate, since they had shared the same mission 2 days earlier, and since he was now appointed Chunin, he was by default the leader. This meant that he had to write up a report, which would be more than incomplete if the one responsible for Gaara's defeat didn't give his input. The man gave Shikamaru Naruto's room number along with a special pass and sent him on his merry way with certain indifference, but not before giving him a handshake that almost crushed his hand. Having carefully analyzed every detail of the past few days, Shikamaru noticed only one thing: so far, nothing good had happened. He wasn't one to believe in karma, but he still hoped the next few days would make up for it. With a poof, the copy ninja himself stood in front of him, not quite the answer he had expected. He didn't seem in a hurry, as usual, even though the service was starting soon. The young Nara didn't like talking to Kakashi. He was jealous of him. That man could be late and fool around and still get away with it. He also almost never lost his cool, which gave him a mean poker face. The young genius turned around, expecting to find the person the jonin in front of him was looking for, but he didn't see anyone who fit the bill. Fancy meeting you here, the man said casually. Wait, wasn't he the one who told Sakura to wake me up? The boy's mood only grew worse. What do you want? My, aren't we impolite today? Sorry, what the heck do you want, Kakashi, sir? Such bitterness. Must be a bad day. Noticing Shikamaru's muteness, he continued, Congratulations on your promotion. He glared at him for what could be an instant, but Kakashi was still able to catch it. It seems you're not too happy about it. I guess I can't blame you. It was a little unexpected. If it were up to me or Asuma, you wouldn't have promoted today. Really? It seemed the jonin wasn't all that bad after all. Don't misunderstand. We disapprove the promotion now because it's a matter that should be handled exclusively by the Hokage. But other than that, you have all the required qualifications to become a fine Chunin. Shikamaru tried to convince himself that he had heard wrong. But when he looked at Kakashi, he noticed that the jonin was actually serious. I believe in you, Shikamaru. So do your father and your captain. The only thing left is for you to believe in yourself. Whatever. Not really the kind of speech he was expecting, especially from Kakashi. It seemed like everybody was trying to make his day as bothersome as possible. He still wondered what possible advantages he would gain from this. He started to make a mental list of the positive and negative things. Positive: he'd have more prestige, more respect, he'd make Sasuke die of jealousy. Not that he had anything against him, but it would be fun to knock him out of the top spot for a while. That was pretty much it actually. On to the negative: he'd have more missions, and more dangerous ones at that. For these missions he'd probably have to wake up earlier. Those missions wouldn't necessarily be with his old team either, meaning no Choji. Furthermore, Iruka was Chunin, so he could end up teaching some troublesome brats one day or another. Seeing the direction this was going, he decided to put these thoughts aside. The more he thought about it, the less these events appealed to him. He'd be the only genin promoted, even though he didn't do anything special, and would only gain more troublesome responsibilities. The boy shrugged and tried to leave. But it seemed Kakashi wasn't done with him yet because a hand reached for his shoulder as he passed by the jonin. Actually, I had something to ask you. You're going home, right? Yeah. Would you mind making a stop at the hospital and checking up on Naruto for me? Huh? Me? Why don't you ask your other team members? I could, but they don't have the right to know his room number, which would make things quite difficult. What about you then? Well, you see, I shouldn't know about this myself. Shikamaru groaned. Besides, by the time I'd gotten there, both Naruto and I would be late for the service. Shikamaru knew about Kakashi's lateness. It was almost as notorious as the boy's own laziness. He was determined to refuse the proposal, but when he tried to voice his refusal, his interlocutor turned into a simple puff of smoke. Such great timing, as expected of a jonin of Kakashi's experience. The young ninja half-heartedly made his way to the hospital, mumbling incoherently about Kakashi, vengeance, troublesome things, and clouds. He became even more annoyed when the nurse shot him a dirty look for asking about Naruto, and saying he was coming to get him out. Now that he thought about it, this was all because of Naruto. If Naruto hadn't pushed him down the stands into the battlefield, none of these events would have happened. He was now fulminating, but only a Nara or Choji would be able to tell, considering that his eternal scowl had barely changed. He finally opened the room, planning to rudely wake up Naruto, and to leave him be as quickly as possible, but not before giving him a piece of his mind. As meager a vengeance as it would be, that would be enough for him. After that, he'd assume his new punish, a promotion. His intentions changed when he stepped in the room. There was the instigator of all his troubles sleeping peacefully in a blank room. All that was there were white walls, a white bed, and the boy on the bed. The way he looked appeased Shikamaru's turmoil. It wasn't peacefulness or that Naruto was cute whatsoever. The end of the world would have to come before a glimpse of that thought ever crossed his mind. But after a moment of observation, he was finally able to put his finger on it: innocence. Though Naruto had just beaten one of the most terrifying monsters he had ever seen, he still had his trademark childish look. That and the pity he felt when he saw that the room was devoid of any medical equipment whatsoever. He didn't even want to wake him up anymore, but he had a mission, and he had to hurry too. He would have to run home in order to make it in time for the funeral ceremony, and he hated running. He decided to call his name lightly. The results were unexpected. Naruto jolted awake, furiously gazing at every angle of the room, shouting Gaara as loudly as a hyperactive 13-year-old kid could do. Calm down. Gaara is gone. You defeated him, remember? Naruto took a deep breath and took a second look around. Shikamaru? What are you doing here? And where is here anyways? The hospital. What's the last thing you remember? Well, I remember kicking Gaara's ass with my awesomeness. You should have been there. And he quickly stopped, now completely serious. Where's Sakura? Is she alright? What about Sasuke? They're both fine. They left the hospital this morning. Not even a minute, and Naruto had already enough material to give the young genius a serious headache. It seemed Naruto had been sleeping all the time, which meant he had no idea what had happened during the last 2 days. Shikamaru took a deep breath. Naruto. I've been sent here on the behalf of Kakashi to get you out of here. Kakashi? Where is he? I need him to teach me the Chidori as fast as. I don't think you'll have time for that now. Huh? Right now you have to head home and take out your funeral clothes. There's a service in about an hour. Really? Naruto's expression saddened. And who is it? You'll know when you get there. Shikamaru made his way out of the room. You should hurry up or you're going to be late. He really wished that another person would tell him. From what he heard, Naruto really appreciated the third. Since Naruto already had his clothes on him, they quickly left each other and headed in opposite directions in order to get ready for the upcoming service. The blonde genin dashed straight home in order to change. Luckily, under the uniform mass of orange jumpsuits laid a completely black shirt. He dug out the pants he kept for serious occasions and changed before running out of his apartment as quickly as he had set foot in it. As he hurried along, he silently prayed it was only someone famous, and not any person he was close to. From what his friend had told him, it couldn't be Sasuke, Sakura, or Kakashi, which was a relief, but his lack of response worried the energetic kid. Shikamaru was almost beheaded by his mother, but since he had time to change and make it on time to the service, she ended up only scolding her son and punished him to a day of double chores. Of course, he could have argued that Kakashi and his commission prevented him from coming earlier, but one thing he learned about his mom and about women in general was the following: never argue with them. Whatever you say, you're still wrong. On the way to the funeral, they met the Akimichi and the Yamanaka, and strolled along with them. The near-complete Team 10 decided to move at their own pace, arriving at the place before most members of their respective clans. From his spot, Shikamaru could see the whole crowd gathered around the memorial. He didn't remember seeing this many people since ever actually. It gave him a certain sense of pride and belonging. He then thought about seeking people he knew. He found most of the teams were scattered all over the place. Though all the jonin filled the front row, he didn't see Kakashi. After a quick scan, he found him near the memorial, next to Konohamaru, Iruka, and Naruto. Finally, he looked at the tomb itself. He wondered what he would be doing today if the third were still alive. Would he be sadder if he had learned to know him more? The most annoying question by far was this one: if he, Shikamaru, had been stronger, would the results be any different than now? From where he stood, all that Naruto could see was Sarutobi's picture, his gravestone, and the Hokage figures in the background. At first his mind went blank. He couldn't understand how a Hokage could ever die. But from what he just heard, the foe he was facing wasn't an ordinary shinobi either. He wanted to be closer, so he could comfort his pupil, but he was at loss for words. For a brief moment he felt like the burden of the village chief fell on the shoulders of everyone present. They would all have to live for his sake, making sure he didn't die in vain. Yet, through all that, he found the strength to smile again. Kakashi had appeared behind him, his presence enough to assure him he wasn't alone. When he left, his teammates were waiting for him. That gave him the feeling that with them he could do anything. Naruto and Shikamaru were different in many ways. As one was behind, carefully gazing at the scene with a scowl on his face, the other was in the middle of it all, smiling at the end. The lazy genius was thinking about the past, while the energetic idiot had his eyes on the future. Where one wished he didn't have to bear his responsibilities, the other fervently wished for the day where he could be in the same position as the third. Yet, in the midst of all their differences, they had one common thought about the third's departure: nothing would be the same anymore. If only they knew. After the third's sudden departure, most of the village had understood that things would change in Konoha. They just didn't know how soon or how that would happen. So, given the circumstances, it wasn't surprising to have a shinobi gathering the day after the funeral service. As soon as they found each other, the Konoha rookies as well as Team Guy gathered at one corner of the area, where they talked about the recent events. But the lack of stupid comments and obnoxious behavior led to a startling discovery. Huh! Naruto isn't here? That not even Sakura and Sasuke knew about their teammates' whereabouts was a little odd, but not alarming. He was probably late, or scheming some prank. Whatever it was, they were certain that they would hear about him soon enough. As for Shikamaru, Naruto's absence was only the tip of the iceberg. Upon closer inspection, he noticed even though most of the other teams were all present, including their captain, he had yet to see Asuma show himself, or Kakashi. When he asked Team 8 about Kurenai, he received a negative answer, and the same happened for Team Guy. That only served to confirm his worries. It seemed these absences were totally intentional. Niji and Shino had already come to the same conclusion, and even though he seemed not to care, so did the raven-haired prodigy. But the super genius didn't have time to fuss about the people missing from this suspicious get-together because the meeting had already started. As you all know, the Honorable Third Hokage was a man of exception. And throughout his entire life he has made decisions for the good of all Konoha. However, there is part of Konoha's history that has been clouded in shadow. The council has decided that you, as accomplished ninjas, had the right to know about your history, either be its amazing achievements, or its darkest hours. It is a truth that has been hidden by the departed Sarutobi himself, in order to protect you, but we think that as shinobi inheriting his will of fire, you will be able to use this knowledge for the greater good of the village. He didn't know why just yet, but Shikamaru had a strange feeling about this whole meeting issue. Somehow, it sounded like a well-made half-truth. Of course, his preoccupation didn't concern what was the lie and what was the truth. This was only the preamble to the masquerade. He wasn't apprehensive of the motive behind this masquerade either. The reason the young Nara's unease was because of a simple question. Who? Who could convince the Konoha Council to overthrow a law made by the Third himself? The pineapple head could only shudder at the thought that it could only be that man. He shivered, thinking that he was involved with a very dangerous guy. After 10 more minutes of useless banter, the speaker, who looked like a distinguished Jonin, or was he a Chunin, started to relate the events that occurred 13 years ago. Of course, that left the whole assembly of soldiers a little vexed. An important gathering for some history lesson that most already learned about in their academy days was a little far-fetched, that is, until the narrator reached the climax mentioning just how the magnificent yellow flash had vanquished, or rather dealt with the nine-tailed fox. And so, using a jutsu of his own creation, the yellow flash, 4th Hokage at the time, finally defeated the Kyuubi. The story doesn't end there, however. The nine-tails demon fox is some sort of natural phenomena, a manifestation of demonic chakra, and as such, cannot be killed directly. You must now be wondering, how then did the 4th dispose of such a threat? It's simple. He sealed the Kyuubi into a newborn baby. Now there was something new. The Kyuubi was still alive and could destroy the village at any given moment. Many of the shinobi present started to shudder at the simple thought of the great calamity being unleashed once again. Of course, few of them had actually experienced the events that happened then, but their imagination and the stories told by their parents and friends were enough to make them seize the importance of this piece of information. For some reason, the Konoha rookies, along with Team Guy, were especially uneasy about this. Niji was lost in thoughts. The truth about Naruto naturally revealed itself to him. How could it not after seeing that evil red fox-looking Chakra? Now, some people think that was the 4th's greatest mistake. Even today there are few people that understand why he did that, as you can probably understand that a second event like that would be more catastrophic than what happened a few days ago, especially since the only shinobi who were able to deal with the threat are now gone. Silence. Since the 3rd gave severe instructions regarding the seal, I will not tell you the name of the baby in question, But I'll give you a tip, he is currently a shinobi. Shikamaru sighed. They could have as well screamed Naruto is the demon fox at the top of the Hokage's tower. It wouldn't have made much of a difference. Whisker-like marks on the cheeks. Orphan almost hated by every adult? Being responsible of defeating a guy who had a demon sealed inside him? Wasn't it obvious who they were talking about? From hearing the bribes of different lively conversations all around him, he could guess that everyone came up with the same conclusion. As expected, most of the genin teams that were with the demon host during the Chunin exams weren't as surprised as the others by what had been said. Still, from the look on their faces, it didn't look like they would ever treat Naruto the same. Even Sasuke and Sakura didn't look like they were the Dobe's teammate anymore. There were some exceptions though. Gratitude of the two young Hyuga towards Naruto hadn't faded away yet. I can't believe that they could let a monster live among us like that for so long. I mean, what was the third thinking? The look Shikamaru gave Ino was a mix of disapprobation, fatigue, and Shikamaru's special I was expecting a dumb comment like this face he especially reserved for most of Ino's comments. Had anything against him before someone told you he was the QB holder? Not really, but... And weren't you the one who cheered for him when he beat Niji? And most important, does he look like he could go all psycho killer Gaara style on us anytime soon? When he was sure he had her pondering her answer for the next 10 minutes, the young Nara decided to reflect on the matter himself. It's not like he had any grudge or hard feelings towards Naruto. Heck, he even considered him his friend, an idiotic kind of like Ino friend, just not that close of a relationship. But it's not like he didn't see where his teammate was coming from. How would you feel if you suddenly learned you were living next to a practically living bomb? That one of your comrade, teammate, or worse your friend could turn homicidal on you in the blink of an eye. It wasn't a very comforting thought for the lazy genius. When he reviewed his talk with Naruto, however, he felt a little more at ease. The brand new promoted Chunin had a talk with the Nine Tails bearer about their last mission the previous day. From what he heard then, and what he learned today, he reasoned Naruto must have used the power sealed within him to protect others, which sounded like something he would do. From what he understood, Naruto was still master of his own body. The thought of an idiot being the guardian of such a force was perplexing to say the least, but Shikamaru knew that if anyone could mess with the demon, it would be Naruto. He had just come to that conclusion when he heard a loud voice in the crowd. I don't like this, said a shinobi. Are you saying that we basically have a demon under human skin waiting heaven knows what just to slaughter us all? Well, replied the jonin, it's a really blunt way of saying this, but you're right. That thing could unleash itself at any given moment. That thing is smart though, so it won't. How, why? Said another one among them. It's simple. If the container dies, so does the demon. It understood that. You're wrong. Everyone without exception turned to look at the shinobi who so casually refuted that answer. The young man hated being the center of attention, but he had to set things straight. Shikamaru himself was surprised when he heard his own voice. He already started to regret speaking out loud. There was no backing down now, though. What? I don't know that much about the QB, but from what I can see it can't escape Naruto or possess him, or anything of the sort. And what makes you so sure about that? You'd think a being that powerful wouldn't have taken over Naruto ages ago. Or that he'd take the opportunity like what happened a few days ago to break free and escape like you said? So why hasn't it done either these past 13 years? Well, the reason is simple, it can't. Very interesting theory. Got any means to back it up? Said the first shinobi from before. Yeah, how could you know better? Said another one. You weren't born yet. You're not even on the same team. Well, Shikamaru hated going into details, and it didn't seem they would actually believe him anyways. At this point it was a jonin's word against the words of a chunin not even officially promoted. Oh, well, he would just have to back off. Looking at his best friend while figuring out an answer, he noticed that he was smiling at him. It startled him for a moment, leaving him to wonder what could change his mood in this situation. He would have never guessed it was due to him taking Naruto's defense. I can certify what Shikamaru said is true. The answer shocked the assembly about as much as if the third himself had come back from the grave. All of the heads present in the room turned towards the left of the jonin speaker to find Shikamaru's backup, which appeared to be none other than the meticulous man responsible for the Chunin's recent promotion. Needless to say, he wasn't as ecstatic as one would expect. Lord Genta. So his name is Genta? Well, at least I know his name now. You mean, what this brat said is true? The fourth wasn't skilled enough to kill the QB, but he also wasn't a total irresponsible that he would seal a demon into someone knowing full well something like that would happen, right, Nara? I guess so. So that makes the QB holder harmless. Shikamaru smelt the bait. He knew it was easy enough for him just to agree with the previous statement. He decided not to let himself fooled by such a clever trick. Besides, he was the kind of person that always stood by the facts. Not quite. That means that Naruto can control the power he has to some extent. The fight with Gaara is proof of this. I suppose that if he misuses this power, he might succumb to the demon fox and all hell could break loose. Well, he was sure that wasn't what all of Naruto's friends wanted to hear, especially Team 7, but it was enough to dispel all misunderstanding. Now, Naruto wouldn't appear as dangerous at first glance as that Jonin wanted to show. What he was more relieved to see, however, was the approbating smile of the one called Genta. Seeing his position in the council was enough to inform the Chunin that he did not want that man as an enemy. Soon after, the shinobi were dismissed. The lazy genius took one more look around his comrades before leaving. It seemed their opinion of Naruto hadn't changed much, which was good. Neji gave him a knowing look as they made eye contact, telling him that not only he knew about Naruto, but he also knew what he was trying to do. He then nodded in thanks. Hinata was not too far from him, and the Nara youngster could read gratefulness from her eyes. He nodded at both and left, followed closely by the rest of his team. Eventually, Ino left them for the flower shop. Choji took this opportunity to question his best friend. Shikamaru? I understand that you were trying to protect Naruto, but why did you go about it half-heartedly? Because I didn't want to get on that Genta guy's bad side. Huh? But wasn't he the one that backed you up? Trust me, the Jonin was nothing but a pawn. That guy is a Konoha council big shot. That announcement could have only come from a higher up from his level. But why did they do that? Because they don't like the QB. If there was one thing Shikamaru liked about his friend, it was that he wasn't nosy. Choji simply stopped the discussion there and switched to another topic. It was fortunate for Shikamaru because he didn't want to share his suspicions even with his friend. It seemed even Neji hadn't noticed, but if the council was behind an event like that, even though it was forbidden by the third, it would be for one reason only. Genta is plotting something against Naruto. Shikamaru concluded that the next few days would be quite busy. Needless to say, this left the Chunin with a sour expression. Ugh, this is becoming so troublesome. Naruto woke up early. Since he had woken up 2 days prior, he had missed all the possible occasions for him to train. He had energy to spare, and for a hyperactive 13-year-old like him it meant he had a furious urge to kick some ass. He was also in a hurry to have Kakashi teach him the Chidori. He didn't want Sasuke to have an edge over him for too long. He quickly put on his orange jumpsuit, ate a bowl of ramen, and readied his weapons. Finally ready, he opened the door to see Shikamaru trying to knock into thin air. The Chunin somewhat lost balance when his arm didn't meet the expected resistance, so he decided to see where the door had went. He understood when he saw Naruto stupidly looking at him and murmured troublesome. Shikamaru! What are you doing here? He nearly screamed. Ever thought of not talking loud? He asked, hands on his ears. Heard it prevents your friends from losing their hearing. Hee. Sorry about that. He lowered his voice. So, what are you doing here, Shikamaru? I heard you like the Super Ninja Mayhem series. Of course I do. Sujiro is like the best hero ever and... Did you watch the latest movie? You mean the fourth one, Ninjas of the Oblivion? No, I haven't been able to get my hands on it yet. I have the movie with me right now. You gotta be kidding me. Naruto's eyes began to sparkle. You have to let me borrow it. Sure. But I have a condition? What is it? What is it? You have to watch it right now because I have to lend it to a friend afterwards. What? But I haven't trained with my squad since the Chunin exams began. Is that so? I guess that settles it then. Too bad though, knowing my friend I don't think I'll be getting it back for a while. For a second, Naruto looked like he was hesitating. Then he spent the next minute completely still, which amazed the young Nara. That must have been the longest period of time he had seen a Naruto conscious and immobile at the same time. The genin eventually agreed to watch the movie and wait for Shikamaru to come and pick up the videotape. The pineapple head quickly left Naruto for the Team 10 training grounds. Shikamaru was relieved that the blonde had accepted his proposition. Now he would be able to speak to Asuma without having to worry about the safety of the QB host. The events of yesterday still fresh in his mind, the young Chunin feared that Genta's assassination attempt on Naruto would start as early as today. Fortunately, the residential area was constantly under heavy surveillance, which meant Naruto's apartment was currently the best place for him to stay at. He figured Naruto would want to train as soon as possible, so yesterday he asked Team 7 about his likes and dislikes. Another fortunate event, It appeared they had the same movie tastes, go figure. He had bought the one Naruto was dying to watch weeks ago. The genius found wise to distract the blonde genin this way. Somehow he wasn't sure that telling him that he shouldn't go out because some Konoha big shots are trying to kill you and I seemed to be the only one that figured it out would have been as persuasive. When he got at Team 10's usual meeting place, Asuma was patiently waiting alone, smoking a cigarette. It made sense since they were supposed to meet 30 minutes from now. He nearly choked when he saw his favorite pupil greeting him. Shikamaru was mostly late, sometimes on time. He was never there before time. Shikamaru, what are you doing here this early? I need to ask you something. Do you know where Hatake Kakashi is? Kakashi? He stroked his pinch, and then took out a puff. Should be back in Konoha soon. He left yesterday to complete an A-rank mission. When Asuma asked his pupil why he wanted to know where Kakashi was, Shikamaru told him about the events that transpired yesterday. That Shikamaru knew of Naruto's past as well as the law concerning its non-disclosure was proof enough for Asuma that something went horribly wrong while he was absent. He then asked about the people present at the event. Mostly genin, he said after a bit of thought. Some team captains were with them as well as the students at the Ninja Academy. None of them took the news very well. Figures. His smile was bitter. Must have been the work of Genta, the no-good bastard. Yeah, I thought as much. He was there too. This time, Asuma did not reply. It seems he was thinking things through. After a while, he asked Shikamaru how many people he thought had figured out the importance of the event. He answered that some of the other teams thought that it was important, but none of them came to the conclusion that Naruto was in any kind of danger. They probably thought it was the other way around to tell the truth. At this point of the discussion, their teammates arrived. Asuma asked not mention this to nobody else. The young Nara agreed. He then tried to excuse himself from training in order to check on Naruto, but his captain stopped him. It'd be wiser for you to stay here and train. I'll go inform Kakashi of the situation immediately. Why? Naruto can't stay in house forever, he whispered. He's bound to leave the residential area sooner or later. I've got to keep an eye on him. Actually, right now you're in no better position than Naruto. What? What are you talking about? Asuma gave no answers, but told Shikamaru he was to stay and train. The genius had no other choice but to comply. His teacher soon left them alone. Ino and Choji were obviously surprised about him and Asuma meeting like this, so they questioned him. The pineapple head opted to tell them part of the truth. He only told them that he had told Asuma about yesterday's meeting since he wasn't there, and that it surprised him. Ino fell for it, but Choji knew better. He did not press on, however, thinking that his partner and friend had a good reason for what he did. On that note, they resumed their usual training regime. Meanwhile, Naruto was enjoying a second viewing of his new favorite movie. Ninjas of Oblivion was all he could ask for, and then some. After the second session, however, he started to feel that itch to move and do something outside. Of course, he remembered he told Shikamaru that he'd wait for him, so he was faced with a dilemma. After a moment of thought, he decided to wait for his friend. After all, he owed him that much for seeing the awesomeness of Sujiro's latest adventure. He took a deep breath and sat on the floor of the living room. 10 minutes later, Naruto was in the middle of Konoha rushing towards his favorite spot besides Ikemaru's ramen stand, the training grounds. Staying put in one place to wait for someone had been too much of a task for him after all. Besides, he had left a note on his apartment door signaling Shikamaru that he had left the door open in case he wasn't home when he came back. The blonde couldn't wait to see his friends. It had been a while since he had a good spar with Sasuke, and he really wanted Kakashi to teach him new tricks. He was almost there when he heard a desperate shriek. Sasuke! That was definitely Sakura's voice. What was happening back there? His heart started to race. Fearing the worst, he rushed to the training grounds even faster than he thought possible for him. At first he could only discern the pink-haired girl. She looked physically alright, which was a relief. He didn't like the expression she had on her face though. He couldn't decide if it was fear or worry, which were both bad things when he thought about it. When he turned his head in the direction she was facing, he quickly understood why. Engulfed in purple like Chakra was his best friend and rival, Sasuke. Only he didn't look like Sasuke at all. As he got closer, he noticed all of the dark spots covering his body. Naruto's body shook all over. Naruto would have thought he was in some kind of trouble if it wasn't for the fact that he had a wicked grin plastered on his face. He opted for direct confrontation. He called his name. Immediately the Uchiha's Sharingan eyes were on him, his smile only growing larger. Naruto suddenly wished he was in his house, waiting for Shikamaru. Still, Sasuke looked like he was about to kill someone, probably him too, therefore he had to do something. Sasuke! Ah! There you are. So, the almighty Naruto finally comes to training with us common people. What the hell are you talking about, Sasuke? What am I talking about? Don't you screw with me, Naruto. We all know how special you are. Naruto didn't understand what he meant, but sure didn't like where this was going. Getting his friend in a darker mood wasn't recommended at the moment, even he could see that. Listen, Sasuke, his tone was as calm and neutral as his worry and fear. Now he understood why Sakura had that face, could permit it. But, as you can see, I'm special too. As he said those words, the purple aura around him intensified. Let's see who's more special, shall we? Naruto obviously tried to object. Whatever that new jutsu was, it looked as dangerous as the Chidori if not more. Kakashi wasn't here and Sakura was mortified. If those weren't signs that this was not a good time to fight, the purple chakra screaming I am evil clearly left no doubt in his mind. Next thing he knew, he was flung back a dozen of meters and rolled on the floor, almost losing consciousness. He woozily got up. Sasuke was now standing where he was a couple of seconds ago. It didn't take a genius to understand what had happened. His crimson eyes were still only fixed on him. His smile unexpectedly grew larger. Naruto's whole body shivered. Sasuke had looks that could rival Gaara in creepiness. The blonde genin took a defensive stance. He was pondering on his next move when he heard the sound of a body hitting the floor. He looked on. Sasuke was now the one on the floor, out of breath. The purple aura and spots on his body also started to fade. Naruto couldn't understand, though. He hadn't done anything to trigger that effect. He decided to carefully approach his friend. From the distance, he could hear some cursing. A little closer and he could hear his voice clearly. Damn, this wasn't supposed to happen. Not now. It seemed that his new jutsu or whatever had some sort of time limit. Naruto permitted himself to sigh from relief. He walked closer. From this distance, he could clearly see the Uchiha's traits. It wasn't what he expected, though. He looked like he was in intense pain. This confused the genin even more, but he did not try to think about it. Forgetting that the raven-haired boy looked like he wanted him dead a second ago, he started to run towards him. Sasuke! He yelled. Whatever his condition, he hoped a quick trip to the hospital was going to fix it. Only a couple of meters were between him and the boy lying on the floor when a kunai flew in his direction and struck the ground right in front of him. Naruto jumped back and tried to look around for any more enemies, but there was no one in the vicinity. He looked back at Sasuke. Sakura was now crouched near him. Sakura, is he? Don't come any closer, she yelled, surprising the yellow-haired leaf Nin. This is all your fault. Sakura? Sasuke has been cursed by Orochimaru, she suddenly said. Kakashi says whenever Sasuke gives into his anger and hatred, the seal will react. He will get a burst of power, but he gets hurt in the process. Naruto was shocked to hear that. At least it explained how he looked when they found him while facing Gaara. Still, he didn't understand why Sakura was mad at him or said this was his fault. Sasuke was already like that when he got here. Wait a second, was it her that threw the kunai? The genin couldn't believe it. The kunoichi continued. After the match with Gaara, I made him promise he wouldn't use it again, he agreed. He thought it was useless since he lost against him anyway. Then yesterday we learned that you had the demon fox sealed inside you. His mind went blank. He couldn't hear the rest of Sakura's rant. He was too shocked to hear his friends had learned the truth. He must have heard wrong. Didn't Irika assure him the third had made a rule against this? Yet he couldn't deny that the words he feared the most came out of her lips. He tried to focus on what she was saying again. It seemed she had calmed down somewhat. This is your fault. I wished I never met you. His heart sank. I wasn't due to her declaration even if it did hurt. He saw something in her eyes he had hoped he'd never see in his friends. The hate, the indifference, the dreadful cold, though it was for a fleeting moment, he saw it in Sakura's emerald eyes. He had worked so hard, bled so much to make them acknowledge him. Now the girl he had a crush on hated his guts. He looked at Sasuke. Anger and a hint of jealousy was all he could see. He stepped back, suddenly unable to face them any longer. Could they really be a team now that they knew? Wouldn't they resent him the way they used to? Would they even be able to greet him the next time he would face them? Those questions were lacerating his heart and soul better than any kunai could ever have. He ran away from the training ground. He didn't know where he was going, but found it better that way. He needed time to think things through and retrieve his optimism. Surely things weren't as bad as he was guessing. Far into the distance, on one of the rooftops of Konoha, one shinobi pointed Naruto to his comrade. The other shinobi nodded. Target acquired. Proceed with the mission. Naruto had finally stopped his mad dash. It had done him good to run senselessly. He had almost forgotten the reason why he was currently out of breath. He sat on the nearest bench and tried to recollect his thoughts. The day had been awful. In fact, it wouldn't be far-fetched to think this was the worst day of his entire life. The secret was out. All of the Konoha shinobis now knew of Naruto's evil guest. He felt something warm on his face, tears. He hadn't cried since Sasuke almost died due to Haku's bloodline. He wiped them away. Shinobi shouldn't cry, and even though he had a good reason, this wasn't going to help. When he took a look at the back of his hands, they were a mess of blood, dirt, and water. Suddenly remembering the heavy blow dealt by his friend, he wondered why he hadn't noticed sooner. A blow like this would have at least broken his nose. The answer eventually came to him. This was due to the Kyuubi. He was more aware of this now that it had cost him so many things. Now more than ever he wished he hadn't been chosen to be the holder of the seal. But he also realized that it was now that he needed it the most. Both the fight with Neji and the battle with Gaara were won partly due to the demon chakra he borrowed. The blonde genin sighed. This was so confusing. At least he was certain of one thing. He was a mess right now, both physically and emotionally. He figured a bath at home followed by a third viewing of Ninjas of Oblivion could comfort him a little, or at least clear his head. He took a good look around him. He had no idea where he was. He could always try to jump on the roof of a nearby building and find his way home from there. He stopped himself just as was about to jump. He looked around again, but more carefully this time. He couldn't find anyone, yet he knew somebody was here because he could feel their presence. "Show yourself," Naruto shouted. No answer. He was beginning to think his mind was playing tricks on him when suddenly his arms slammed against his ribs. He tried to move, but whatever was restraining him had completely sealed the movement of his body's upper region. Suddenly two masked figures appeared. From what he could see they were both shinobi, but he couldn't figure out their rank out of the clothes they were wearing. One of them was holding something. Upon closer inspection, he saw a wire going from his gloved hands to the genin himself. He understood now what was going on. "Hey! Who are you guys? Release me immediately." Empty demand. At least he tried. Of course, he was totally ignored. The one holding the rope started talking to his fellow assaulter. "So is that him, eh?" "Yup, you can see his whiskers. Definitely the target. Let's get this over with." That being said, the first shinobi, and subordinate by the looks of things, started to pull Naruto towards him. The blonde resisted, spitting out every insult known to a 13-year-old. When that didn't work, he concentrated chakra into his feet and walked in the other direction. Exasperated by the sudden resistance, the shinobi holding the rope enrolled around his wrist, freeing his hands. He made a couple of hand signs and closed them together. Naruto could see the electrical energy coming out from his arms. Whatever he was going to do with this would certainly not be pleasant. The soldier took hold of the rope once again. Lightning element, flash wire technique. The electrical energy surged from his hands to the wire and directly into Naruto. Never before had Naruto experienced pain by electricity. The shock was intense and left the poor genin collapsed on the ground, breathless. The shinobi resumed his pulling of the now more cooperative captive. Still conscious, the Kyuubi host tried in vain to move and resist. He felt his strength returning, but not fast enough. The assaulter was now within arm's reach of his target. Naruto wondered if this was to be the end of this miserable day. He prayed for someone to save him. Apparently someone heard him. The wire-wielding ninja got kicked to the face. Now standing in his place was a person Naruto couldn't be happier to see. "Kakashi." "Ah, Naruto in trouble, as usual." He sighed. "You could have at least give me some time to rest properly." "Damn it, Kakashi! This really isn't the time." The genin got up. He was finally free from the wire. "I can see that." One glance at Naruto's condition and the copy ninja genius had all the information he needed to tackle the situation. "I don't know what you want with him, but you messed with the wrong kid. He's my pupil after all." The shinobi got up, poised to attack. The leader of the two who up until now had been motionless finally signaled his teammate to wait. He sighed, then moved to front, making the single hand sign needed to perform the shadow clone technique. In an instant, both Naruto and his teacher were surprised to see themselves surrounded by a dozen of lookalikes. "Stand down, Hatake." "The shadow clone technique and that voice you guys are leaf mean. What do you want with Naruto?" "This is none of your business, Hatake. Just stand down and let me accomplish my mission." Kakashi started to reply, however he was startled by another voice. "Konoha ninjas?" This was Naruto's voice. Kakashi looked at Naruto for an instant, thinking about how shocking this news could be for such a young shinobi. He remembered, however, this was no time to lose focus. He was right. The brief time Kakashi stopped paying attention to his surroundings, one of the shinobi clones started to make hand signs. Fire element, fireball technique. The hardened Jounin jumped out of harm's way, leaving his pupil defenseless. Immediately, all of the other shinobi rushed towards Naruto. Kakashi worried. The genin looked spaced out after realizing they were from Konoha. He shouted his name hoping he would react. Unfortunately, react he did. He let out a disturbing cry as he unleashed an uncanny amount of chakra. The sudden burst of energy knocked back most of the assailants. Naruto then launched himself at the shinobi that had tried to capture him earlier. The surprised ninja had barely the time to recover that Naruto was upon him, and punched him in the face. The power of the blow sent the unfortunate assaulter flying into the nearest building. The demon chakra-powered kid switched targets. He didn't know if it was because of the habit of using that particular ninja art, or because of his senses heightened by the Kyuubi, but he somehow knew exactly where the real clone-making ninja was. He approached him and grabbed him by the throat. The man agonized in pain. It seemed Naruto's red chakra had fire-like characteristics. Kakashi went after Naruto. From the looks of things, he had most probably killed the first ninja and was about to do the same for the other. Naruto, he yelled, stop, or you'll kill him. Naruto suddenly dropped the shinobi who was now panting hoarsely on the floor. The genin looked at his hands, and then at the man at his feet. His hands started to shake. He couldn't believe what he had almost done. He let out another cry, more humane than the last, and looked at his teacher before dashing out of his view. Kakashi sighed. The kid was certainly back to himself, but now the Jounin was in a terrible situation. He wanted to go after Naruto, because he had no idea what the child could in such an unstable state of mind. On the other hand, if he went after him, the Leaf Nin assaulter would most likely die from his injuries, preventing Kakashi from finding out anything relevant on this event. He finally opted for investigation. Naruto, I hope you don't do anything stupid. Shikamaru hurried as lazily as he could. The training had been better than usual, but the genius only thought that it was a waste of time preventing him from reaching Naruto. He feared the worst. There was no way a dumb, energetic kid like him could be waiting patiently for his return. As he walked towards Uzumaki's apartment block, he saw what looked like a small burst of chakra. The color appeared familiar as well. The Chunin sighed. He hated running. He couldn't pinpoint the exact location of the burst, but since it didn't seem to cause a significant disturbance, he tried looking for most deserted place in the area. He figured he found the place when he found a collapsed wall. Not far from the wall was a burnt ground. These were the only clues to the battle that had taken place. This annoyed the lazy Chunin. This wasn't enough to even give him a lead on Naruto's current location. Shikamaru wondered where he should look for Naruto next. He opted for their training grounds. He had almost left the desolated area when he felt a hand on his shoulders. He instinctively jumped forwards, turning around in the process, and took out a kunai from his pouch. Whoa there, soldier! Kakashi, sir. He lowered his weapon. Where's Naruto? Not here, I'm afraid. He headed northeast after the fight. So there was a battle here, I'll go after him. You won't be able to catch up with him, not in his state. Besides, I have something else I want you to do. Not another one of your stupid errands, he whined. Sorry, but I'm kind of busy myself. His eyes made it look like he was smiling. Anyways, could you check on the rest of Team 7? Naruto shouldn't have been in this area in the first place, so I'm worried as to why he came in the first place. I get it, you think he was blackmailed into coming here. This is so annoying. I guess I'll do it. With that said, Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke. Shikamaru wondered when he'd get to learn the trick. It seemed quite handy. Unfortunately for him, he had to resort to running and rooftop hopping, both of which required a certain amount of effort. Shikamaru found the training grounds empty, but from the look of things a spar had taken place not too long ago. He cursed. He had just missed them. He had no idea where to look next because based on Kakashi's hypothesis they were either hostages or worse. He still wasn't sure what to do when he heard a voice. Shikamaru. The Chunin nearly jumped in surprise. When he turned around he saw a familiar face. Niji. What are you doing here? I'm looking for Sasuke and Sakura. I have to finish my report on the Gaara incident. I talked to Naruto 2 days ago about this and figured I'd found them here. He sighed. Apparently I just missed them. They are both at the Konoha hospital. Come again? Earlier, Master Guy, Tenten and I went to visit Lee. On my way back I saw Sasuke in a room and Sakura sitting beside him. Oh great, just what I needed. He started to leave, but stopped himself. By the way, why are you here? Niji looked at Shikamaru for a while before answering. I wanted to make sure Naruto was alright. I found it weird that Naruto wasn't in the hospital with Sasuke. It means either he doesn't know about it, or he is in trouble himself, finished Shikamaru. He shrugged and walked away, but it seemed Neji wasn't done with him. You're hiding something from me, he said bluntly. Shikamaru did not respond. Listen, I know you have a better idea of what's happening to Naruto than I do, and I know he is in trouble. I want to help. I owe him a lot. Shikamaru silently cursed. Neji was troublesome. He knew the Hyuga could take care of himself, probably better than he could anyway, but he rejected the idea of having him involved in this. He didn't want him to attract Genta's attention. Normally I tell you, because all of this way past troublesome, but I can't. I was told to keep it a secret. What I can tell you, however, is that both Kakashi and Asuma are on his case, and I was ordered to stay clear. The Hyuga couldn't argue against that. If two of the higher tier jounin were on this, there wasn't much he could do. He started to leave. And one more thing, stay away from the guy who took my defense yesterday. Most likely he has something to do in all this. And he's powerful. How powerful are we talking about? Powerful enough to promote me to Chunin. Shikamaru hurried to the hospital next. As far as he was concerned, this had cemented Kakashi's theory. He did, however, want to confirm, just to be certain. He easily found the room thanks to an encounter with a nurse from the Nara clan. Apparently, Sasuke had been admitted into the establishment about an hour ago. No wounds or signs of internal damage, he only needed some rest. The first thing he saw when he entered the room was Sakura's head resting on Sasuke's bed. He thought she was sleeping, but she lifted her head when his footsteps came within hearing distance. He felt sweat drop. She was in a stormy mood. Being Ino's teammate and friend, he knew what to expect. What do you want? I came to see you guys. How is he doing? Her expression softened somewhat. He'll be fine. How'd he get hurt? None of your business. Shikamaru concluded this was a touchy subject. He didn't care about that anyway. All he wanted to know was if Kakashi was right or not. Listen, I met Kakashi earlier. He just came from his mission and wanted to make sure you two were alright. He worried one of you might be attacked, so he wanted me to make sure everything's fine. That being said, did you or Naruto do this to Sasuke, or was it someone else? No. He did that to himself. She had gone from angry to sad in a heartbeat. Her eyes were fixed on Sasuke. Shikamaru wasn't even surprised. After all, they were talking about the guy who collapsed after his battle in the Chunin's preliminaries. It probably had to do with the Sharingan. Unfortunately, that meant that Kakashi was wrong and that Naruto's teammates hadn't been used as bait. So what about Naruto, then? Weren't you supposed to be doing combat practice together? Naruto? Her expression became cold. This is all his fault. If only Sasuke hadn't learned he was the QB host. He didn't listen to the rest of her rant. A new and alarming idea had popped into his head. What if Naruto had gone in that area not because he was blackmailed, but because he was emotionally unstable? He quickly figured the most obvious reason for it to happen. Now because of him, Sasuke exhausted himself and collapsed, and Sakura was still ranting. Shikamaru decided to cut it short. What happened to Naruto? What? What about Naruto? What happened to Naruto when Sasuke collapsed? Dunno. He looked shocked when I told him it was his fault. Next thing I knew, he was gone. Shikamaru was wasting time. He still did not have the answer he was looking for. Did you tell Naruto? Tell him what? That you learned he was the host. Did you tell him? Yeah, I did. Why? The young genius held his head against his face. He felt a headache was coming soon. Do you have any idea of what you just did? I don't care right now. Sasuke's hurt because of him. He could go to hell for all I care. Shikamaru thought that it might just be where Naruto was heading. It was now his turn to be in a dark mood. He didn't want to worry Sakura more than he needed. Besides, he didn't have the time to. He did, however, want to tell her a piece of his mind. And as he walked out from the room, he did just that. Sakura, you just might be an even bigger idiot than Naruto. Leaving the room escorted by an array of medical equipment aimed at his head, he opted to quickly exit the hospital. Once outside, he found Kakashi waiting for him. So, how are they? Fine. I wouldn't say the same for Naruto, though. Why? What happened? Shikamaru waited until they were out in the crowd before explaining to him what he had learned. Kakashi sighed. I almost wished he had been blackmailed. It would have made things easier. No kidding. Anyway, any leads on where he currently is? He's nowhere to be found. What? Did he get caught? The situation is much worse, I'm afraid. The young Nara thought nothing could be worse than the current situation. He cursed mentally when he realized what he had just been thinking. Now things would definitely get worse. Naruto isn't in Konoha anymore. Naruto isn't in Konoha anymore. Shikamaru tried to convince himself he had heard wrong. It failed miserably. He then hoped maybe what Kakashi meant was different. You mean, the assailants kidnapped him and took him out of the city, right? No, I mean Naruto willingly ran away from Konoha. Shikamaru sighed. His expression would have shown worry, but right now he was too tired to do so. The terrible news might have had more of an effect on him earlier today. Considering the situation, Shikamaru would have been more surprised if Naruto hadn't run away. Something puzzled him though. Mind telling why you're not currently after him? Kakashi motioned the shadow user to follow him into a more private place. After a couple of turns from the main street, they were completely alone in a place he wasn't sure he recognized. There the Jounin explained to him the fight that had taken place as well as the identity of Naruto's assailants. Shikamaru was glad he had all of the info on the current situation, but it led into more questions on top of the one Naruto's teacher still didn't answer. You still didn't answer my question. Why aren't you currently after him? Well, that's because I don't want to end in the same situation as him. When a ninja ran away from his village, he was automatically recorded in the village bingo book with at least a B rank rating. The reason was that he might reveal some secrets to neighboring countries. Considering Naruto was already seen as a threat by the village, he would probably get an A rank. Don't the Jounin have some kind of special permission to leave the village or something? Only for half a day at most. After that the Hokage, and for now the council, must be informed of the shinobi's position. And since you just told me that the ones who attacked Naruto were from Konoha, not to mention they had the mission to do so, things just keep getting better and better, he said wryly. The situation was dire to say the least. Naruto had fled Konoha at one of the worst possible times. Anything that currently looked remotely like a threat was dealt with severely. He at least knew that a part of the council would flat out reject Kakashi's demand for a retrieval mission. The real problem was that even if they did agree on the mission, they surely wouldn't send him, or any other team for that matter. They were so busy after the recent attack of the combined hidden villages of Sound and Sand that they had no human resource to spare. So what are you going to do? What else am I going to do? I'm going to get my student back. I'm in a bit of a pickle though, since I can't leave and all. The Chunin didn't like where this was going. He wondered, was it coincidence that every time that Jounin talked to him, things got exponentially troublesome? Whatever Kakashi had in mind, it was sure to become a nuisance for him as well. That's where you come in. I need you to. I thought as much, said Shikamaru. He became extremely tired all of a sudden. Something the matter? In fact, there is. Captain Asuma told me not to get involved with this, and he wouldn't tell me why. You, on the other hand, have done everything to do just that. And it's not just you two either. Most adults I know are hiding something from me. There was a pause, one where Kakashi looked at Shikamaru with something akin to pity, and the Nara simply glared back, his usual scowl on his face. The Chunin looked around. They were still in the early afternoon. Hard to believe the day had already gone to hell after such a short amount of time. The Jounin finally sighed. Shikamaru. Listen. I want to help. I also want to know what I'm getting myself into. I know this is kind of urgent and all, but I need some time to be on my own. Fine, Kakashi had said after another long moment of silence. Meet me in front of the Hokage Tower at sundown. You know I might not be there, said the genius after consideration. Yeah, but I know you will. He made the familiar hand sign and vanished, leaving Shikamaru to find his way back on his own. The young man wearily headed home. He didn't feel this tired since he came back from the forest of death. He needed time to think. No, scratch that. He actually needed time not to think. All the recent events happened so fast they were literally giving him a headache. Kakashi was right, he would be there. Shikamaru knew deep down he wanted to see things trough till the end, but before that, he needed some answers. The first thing he noticed when he entered his house was the smell of cooked meat. Shikamaru heard no reply when he announced his presence. His mom probably went out to shop after making dinner, as usual. He couldn't help but grin. If Mrs. Nara was out, then Mr. Nara couldn't be very far. He took off his shoes and headed towards the living room. There, Shikaku Nara was busy sleeping, a newspaper covering his face. When he got close enough, his son swiftly took out the newspaper from its resting place. The sleeping father jolted out of the comfort of his sofa looking half scared, half confused. The young Nara was always amazed by the result. He couldn't blame his father though. The person who usually woke up Shikaku in such a manner was his wife, and only when she was furious. When the man realized who had just woken him up, he collapsed on his sofa shooting a murderous, yet tired glare at his son. Jerk. Sorry, but I needed to wake you up. Can't a man get his well-deserved rest after a tiring B-rank mission? Not when said man is currently skipping his deer-tending duties. What do you want? Said a now fully awake Shikaku. We need to talk. The man took a good long look at his son. A bitter smile appeared on his lips. So, it's that time already? He muttered so softly that his son didn't hear. He got up and left for the deer grounds with Shikamaru not far behind. They walked until they reached the outskirts of the Nara forest. Shikamaru then realized his father knew what they were going to have an important talk. This part of Konoha was strictly forbidden to anyone who wasn't from the Nara clan. Shikaku found a tree he could sit against and waited for his son to do the same. Then they casually started to talk about the deer and how they were doing. An onlooker might think it was their way of fooling someone trying to listen in on their conversation. In reality, it was a way for the Nara men to clear their minds before any serious discussion. I start, stated the father. Why are you only asking now? Because I'm about to do something incredibly stupid. I just want some answers before that. And what might that? Sorry to interrupt, but it's my turn to ask now. His father snorted. He wondered who had made the rules for Nara discussions so fair. He remembered. Both of them decided discussions to be boring and decided to turn it into a game. The rules: they could only ask questions taking turns, one per turn. No lies. It was satisfying for both as it made things much more interesting. Shikamaru continued. Why was I named Chunin by the council? Someone needed a hostage to keep me in check. He's currently plotting something big. I was onto him and he found out. He made you a Chunin so he could have you MIA the second I tried anything funny, the bastard. Shikamaru could easily guess who someone was. Well, that explained why everybody was acting funny around him. He remembered what Genta told his father about Konoha taking care of him. It made more sense now. Even though it wasn't his fault, he felt bad holding back his dad like that. In any case, it was his father's turn to ask a question. What's this incredibly stupid move you're going to make? I'm about to risk my life to save a friend. Details? TCH. Shikamaru was annoyed. He forgot one was allowed to ask for details if the answer was deemed insufficient. With a sigh, he related the events of the past 2 days to his father. As expected, Shikaku was surprised when heard about yesterday's meeting, and the news of Naruto's sudden departure left them in a somewhat awkward silence. His then father smiled. In other words, you let Kakashi boss you around on top of a Suma? What an idiot! Maybe you should also show your father some love and support by doing some of my missions for me. Shut up. It's not like I had any choice, you know. Besides, you asked a question when it wasn't your turn, so I get to ask too now. That was enough to turn Shikaku's smile into a scowl. First, why do you think Captain Kakashi needs me in the first place? There's plenty of Chunin to help him with this. You're a brand new Chunin, meaning you're not currently assigned to any teams besides the Sumas. As a Chunin, you can make your own team or take on a mission solo. And considering the news about the Kyuubi, he needed someone he could trust and who would see to Naruto's well-being as well. Second question, why does someone want Naruto dead? That's not necessarily what he's after. What do you mean by that? I don't have to answer that, since that was your third question. You'll just have to figure it out by yourself. Damn it. Last question, why are you going to do it? Dunno. Don't know? I don't know. At first, it was because I didn't want anyone to die. We all went through the Chunin exams and that hellish attack from 2 hidden villages, and still, all of the young rookies along with Team Guy made it through. Maybe I felt responsible because at the time I was the first one to figure out something was up. I keep thinking there's something else, but I can't figure what it is. TCH. Troublesome kid. You're a true idiot, you know that? Shikaku gave him a warm, fatherly smile. I could say the same the way you ended with someone like mom. Like father like son, I guess. They both silently watched the deer herd stupidly grinning. Laughing must have been too troublesome for them. After a while, the father headed home. Shikamaru stayed to watch the clouds. The talk with his father only lasted half an hour. The boy was planning to spend all of the remaining time doing what he liked doing the most. he had a feeling he wouldn't be doing so for quite a while. Most people assumed cloud watching was Shikamaru's way of saying he took a nap. They were wrong. The young man would simply lie on his back and literally watch them. His scowl disappeared in those moments as every tensed muscle in his body gradually relaxed. The few people that observed him in those moments noticed he didn't do the things normal people tended to do when watching clouds, like trying to identify the various shapes they could have, or following their direction. It was like he was taking a nap with his eyes open. More than once Choji had asked him what was he actually looking at, or looking for up there. The answer surprised him. Shikamaru didn't know. In fact, he often wondered why it had to be clouds. He had tried things like stargazing or taking walks. Even watching clear skies didn't have the same effect. After a while he figured it was because he wanted to be like them. Maybe it was because he had become addicted to the fleeting moments his mind actually went totally blank, not thinking of anything. It was almost time for the meeting when Shikamaru finally got up. He didn't know for how long he was there, only that the sun was almost down. As walked his mind suddenly shifted into gear, and he thought about the clouds and how they needed the wind in order to move. Maybe that's why he wasn't totally opposed to the idea of risking his life for Naruto. Maybe he needed this kind of situation in order to grow and become stronger. He didn't know why, but now he was thinking about Choji. He finally understood why his friend was so proud and happy that he had taken Naruto's defense. It must have reminded him of his past. Shikamaru remembered befriending Choji out of the sheer fact that the others were making fun of him and he had found their behavior retarded. He was surprised at how long it took to figure that out. He concluded another reason why he liked cloud gazing was the epiphanies he would get afterwards most of the time. He decided not to go home. Goodbyes were troublesome and he really didn't want his mother worried, or upset, while he was in the vicinity. He took a turn to the left and headed straight to the Hokage Tower. When he arrived, he noticed, with little shock, that Kakashi was nowhere to be found. Figures, the Chunin thought bitterly, the guy can't even be on time to save his student's life. A man casually dressed exited the tower and headed towards his direction. Shikamaru had a feeling things would get more troublesome. Mr. Nara. The council is waiting for you. Waiting for me? Yes, Mr. Hitaki said you both wanted a meeting with the council. Unfortunately, he said he would be a little late, and that since you knew the subject of the meeting you could start without him. Troublesome jerk. He muttered. Shikamaru let out a sigh and resigned himself. Please lead the way. With pleasure. The two made their way towards a room Shikamaru was now familiar with. He didn't think he would be back in the room of his promotion so soon. Like last time, the room was almost filled. There were some new faces, while some were missing. Unfortunately, Genta was here as well. He took a quick glance at the assembly. They all looked as if they had been here for hours. He theorized they were discussing about the various ways to recover from the last attack without showing signs of weakness in front of the other countries. He made his way to the center of the room like the last time. As he got closer he noticed that none of the people representing the well-known clans were here. Not good, he thought. He had an idea of the council's attitude towards Naruto from the last time he was here. Chances were high his proposal would be refused. State your name, rank as well as the object of this meeting. Nara Shikamaru, Chunin. I am here to bring you important news as well as a request. There was a pause. He noted a woman scribbling something on his right. She was probably in charge of meetings record for the archives. Please go on. Naruto has run away from Konoha. He waited for the murmurs to quiet down before adding, I would like to request to take care of the retrieval mission. More whispers? Unsurprisingly, Genta was the one to reply. We have been informed of this incident earlier today. You have done well to inform us, but I'm afraid it would be hazardous to send a brand new Chunin on such a high-risk mission. Actually, I don't think it's such a dangerous mission. Naruto is an emotionally unstable kid hosting one of the most powerful demons to ever roam the earth, said someone to his left. The young boy responsible for the defeat of a giant sand demon? Asked a second. Well, whatever the case, I don't think it would be reasonable to send a brand new Chunin after an S-rank criminal, concluded yet another one of them. S-rank criminal? You've got to be kidding me. Naruto hasn't even left the village for a day now. You're right, was the reply of the leader of the board, and that's the only reason why the hunter Nin haven't been dispatched yet. They will however be sent to retrieve him tomorrow at dawn. Well, members of the council, this was the last case up for discussion today. The meeting session is as of now closed. All Shikamaru could do was watch as the members of the council exited the room one by one. It was true he could have told them about what Kakashi had told him, but he had two reasons not to. First, he had no proof of his claims, meaning he could be discredited in the eyes of the council. second revealing Genta's plot, even if he would deny it, would definitely do more than get the young man on his bad side, something he wished to prevent at all costs. The Nara boy decided to go after the man responsible for this whole mess personally. He found him heading towards the exit. The man stopped to face Shikamaru. Mr. Nara, the session is over. You can see I am leaving, you should do the same. Sorry, but we have to talk. Oh, and what more is there to say? Only this. I know what happened to Naruto and I know you're behind it. Genta's face became pale, but he managed to smile. Such an accusation, Mr. Nara. I hope you have proof to back it up. He doesn't, but I do, said a voice Shikamaru instantly recognized. Hatake. Genta's tone was ice cold. Late, as usual, the meeting has already ended. Well, you see, I was on the road to the Hokage Tower when I took a wrong turn and got lost on the road of life. There I met this guy and he gave me this funny-shaped scroll and I. Late, yet right on time, the paradox of Hatake Kakashi. Shikamaru reminded himself to thank him later and punch him in the gut. Apparently, he wasn't the only one annoyed by his behavior though. Genta decided to stop the useless chattering. Hatake, he simply warned. Right, so where were we? Yes, Naruto's case. I'm sure you know that Naruto left a huge amount of chakra before he left. I confirmed it was because of a battle that took place at the time. Due to those circumstances and your recent announcement, you might say that Naruto was chased out of Konoha. I suppose you have proof of what you are assuming. In fact, I do. I was there myself. I met his assailants. One of them is currently under my custody. So? He was badly hurt, so I took him somewhere to treat his wounds. I also had a little chat with him. Funny how people suddenly become honest when they think they're about to die. Shikamaru's reasoning about Genta's involvement in the attack was confirmed when he took a glance at him. He wasn't smiling anymore. The boy had to admit Kakashi was pretty cool, totally changing the situation like that. Maybe now that the tables had turned, the genius help wasn't even needed. What do you want, Hatake? Give me Naruto's retrieval mission. Genta snorted at Kakashi's demand. It will take some time. You'll have to wait at least until tomorrow afternoon. Yeah, confirmed Shikamaru with a sarcastic tone. That'll give you more than enough time for your hunter Nin to go after Naruto, am I right? Hey, whatever, replied Genta. He was now smiling. I can give you the mission right now if you want, Hatake. That doesn't change the fact that Naruto will be arrested the second he steps into Konoha. Genta was right. Whatever the reason, the fact that Naruto had fled and been classed as an S-rank criminal still remained. There had to be some way to justify him, but both Kakashi and Shikamaru had no idea what to do. Fortunately, they knew just the person to ask to. So, what do we do now? Kakashi's question was directed to Genta, which surprised him. What do you mean we? As far as I'm concerned, this is your problem, Hatake. As far as I'm concerned, replied the Jounin, Naruto's well-being is directly linked to your political career, Mr. Genta. The only thing the council member could do was sneer wildly at Kakashi. He thought about the situation for a moment, and came out with a solution. He needs an excuse for leaving the village. There would be no trouble if he left because he was sent on a mission. But the council already knows he ran away, objected Shikamaru. I can deal with that. The real problem lies on the fact that he can't go on a mission solo, since he's only a genin. Someone has to find him, give him the task and complete it with him. I'll go, he's my pupil after all. Kakashi, I think it would be better if I went. Shikamaru. We'll talk about it later. Genta shrugged and went into the Hokage's office followed by the shinobi. Kakashi tried to convince the Chunin of the mistake he was doing, but Shikamaru didn't want to hear it. The man responsible for Naruto's departure opened a bunch of scrolls on the Hokage's desk and asked the two of them to pick a mission. Shikamaru took a quick glance at the scrolls. What he saw shocked him. Wait a sec, these are all S-ranked missions. So? Naruto is an S-ranked criminal. It is only reasonable that he redeems himself with a mission of the same class. Besides, those are the only missions currently available. You're free to wait for the new missions that will come tomorrow. Genta was smiling. He had the upper hand once again. They all knew that if they wanted to find the blonde genin before the hunter Nin did, they had to leave as soon as possible. Shikamaru sighed and picked one of the scrolls. The council president objected at first because this wasn't the normal procedure, but he quickly let it slide. It was a small price to pay to get rid of those annoying pests. Shikamaru left the tower with Kakashi. The Jounin was still worried about the situation. Shikamaru decided to explain his choice now that Genta wasn't present. If Kakashi left, Genta would be very well able to find Naruto's assaulter and make him disappear without a trace while the Jounin was absent. It also came to the genius mind that Genta might be plotting something against the rest of Team 7. If he left, on the other hand, it might improve things in more ways than one. He then gave the scroll to Kakashi, saying, "Besides, it's not like I'm in any hurry to die." Kakashi took a look at the mission. The task was one of the most dangerous, so he didn't understand at first what Shikamaru had meant. The mission was the capture of an S-rank criminal. It was a hard task most Umbu had aborted midway. Then he got the picture. "So, you're planning to abort the mission? Very clever." "Yeah, we'll roam about for a month or two, and then we'll come back." Heh. He sighed. "I just hope Naruto doesn't do anything stupid in the meantime." "What could he do? I don't think there's any way for him to worsen the situation." "We're talking about Naruto, you'd be surprised." Kakashi wished the Chunin good luck and disappeared. Shikamaru looked around him. It was now dark. He sighed. He was now all alone. As he walked towards the gates of the Hidden Leaf village, he thought about all the people he was leaving behind. His first thought was for his mom. She would kill him without fail when he'd come back. Then he was reminded of his own team. There was no doubt that they would be worried, but he was sure that Captain Asuma would understand. He felt particularly bad for Choji. These last days had been the first time he had ever hid anything from his best friend. Not to mention he was now leaving him without a word or anything. Shikamaru was tempted to march this instant towards the Akimichi grounds and have a talk with him, but he resisted. It was too late now. Nevertheless, he silently swore he'd do everything to come back in one piece and tell him everything. Shikamaru summarized his current situation. He was currently leaving behind his team, his friends and family, risking his life. For what? For a genin probably hated by most of the village at the moment, and that he didn't know that well too. His father was right. He was an idiot. That didn't prevent him from grinning stupidly, thinking he had done the right thing. He was almost at the gates when a hand landed on his shoulder. The Chunin tried not to be startled and turned around to see who it was. His surprise dropped by half when he saw the man the hand belonged to. First Kakashi, then Niji, and now you. Can't you people stop coming from behind? Maybe if you stop daydreaming all the time you'd notice people coming from behind, with your ninja training and all, was his father's reply. The man had brought a backpack along with Shikamaru's Chunin vest. He handed both to his son. "I figured you wouldn't be coming back home, so I brought you these. You might need them." "What's in the bag?" "You'll find out soon enough." "Thanks, Dad." "You sure you want to do this?" His father knew he was a shinobi and all, but he was still his father. "Yeah. At least now nothing prevents you from opposing Genta for the moment. Give him hell for me, okay?" "You can bet I will." Shikaka left. Shikamaru walked through the gates by showing the scroll to the guards and went into the forest. He jumped his way to the top of the highest tree and took a good look at the village. He usually did that for every mission that had him leave the village. It was the first time he had looked at the scenery by night. The shining stars mixed with the different light posts and house lights were truly breathtaking. Not for Shikamaru though. He simply shrugged. He wasn't that much of a poet. After a final silent goodbye to Konoha, he moved out. Shikamaru had been hopping from tree branch to tree branch for so long he had lost track of the time. The only thing he knew was that the sun had been up for a while, and that he was bored out of his mind. That Jounin could travel so much alone was a mystery to him. At first he guessed the best way to pass time was to think about something else, so he spent the night doing so. In the end it only succeeded to worsen his mood. There was a little time before noon when Shikamaru realized he was slowing down. He wasn't surprised. He was sleep-deprived. While looking through his new Chunin vest for something to fight off his fatigue, he found some red marbles he immediately identified as soldier pills. Choji had mentioned those during the preliminaries. One of those and a ninja could fight for 3 days straight without any need to sleep. Considering Naruto had a head start of almost half a day, in demon form no less, Shikamaru knew he'd need to use one of those if he wanted a chance to catch up to him before it was too late. He took a pill. The effects were immediate. He felt a rush of adrenaline as well as chakra. He was much faster than his regular self, even in his best form, and his fatigue simply evaporated. He felt like could keep this up forever. Things were still pretty boring though. And they stayed that way for yet another full day. The fact that he was simply following Kakashi's hunch had him worried until he finally started to pick up erratic traces still leading northeast. Leave it to Naruto to blindly go in a straight line. He wasn't complaining though, because it made the first part of his task easier. Also, the fact that he hadn't slept for almost 40 hours started to take a toll on him, soldier pill or not. He hoped he'd find him soon and get some shut-eye. He picked up the pace. A couple of more hours passed and still nothing. Frustration began to creep into the Nara's mind along with doubt. Maybe he had taken the wrong way. Maybe Naruto didn't need sleep and traveled as fast as he did. Maybe he was already in the country of lightning. Kakashi might have been a better choice for this mission after all. He decided that after another day of pointless pursuit he would try to contact Naruto's captain, or his father, for advice. As he was brooding over his bad luck and pathetic tracking skills, he noticed a familiar-looking silhouette not too far away. He thought his mind had finally started to play tricks on him, but just in case, he decided to shout out his name. It's not like someone would be watching him yelling at an illusion and call him crazy. After another minute of doubt, he called his name. Naruto. The results were unexpected. The blur looked confused for a moment, and then significantly increased the pace, momentarily leaving Shikamaru's line of vision. The Chunin cursed and hurried after him. After a while he spotted him jumping off the trees at high speed. He was definitely trying to run away from him. The Nara boy relied on the boost in power given by the drug to keep up. With a few more minutes he was close enough so he could try to talk to the blonde, but this time there was no reaction. He mentally shrugged. Maybe if Naruto saw his face things would settle down. A few more jumps, and he was next to him. His hand reached for the genin's shoulder, but something unexpected happened. He had barely touched Naruto that the blonde disappeared in a puff of smoke. Shikamaru lost his balance. He didn't seem to notice. He was so confused. The Chunin didn't even have time to mentally curse that he was slammed into the nearby tree. When he opened his eyes after the shock, he saw the real Naruto with a kunai at his throat and an expression face telling Shikamaru that he was at least as shocked as the Chunin of this sudden meeting. The surprise didn't last long, and Naruto's kunai went from an inch of Shikamaru's neck to an uncomfortable contact with his skin. The blonde's face told him that wouldn't hesitate to dispose of him if he did anything stupid. Lucky for him, that wasn't his forte. Why are you after me? Because I want to help you. Sorry, but how do I know I can trust you? Naruto, it's me, Shikamaru. Can't you tell? There was a short pause during which Naruto looked like he was struggling with something. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay out of my way. Next time I won't be so kind. Without any further notice, Naruto punched Shikamaru in the stomach with all his strength. The genius bent over, his hands instinctively reaching for the source of his pain, but the blonde stopped his arms in order to open a way for second body blow. Thinking the shinobi was knocked unconscious, Naruto left. Normally, Shikamaru would have fainted, but the stamina-strengthening pill he took also seemed to affect his overall endurance, leaving him in a spot where he wished he did lose consciousness. He wasn't knocked out, but the pain was there, and it hurt like hell, not to mention the fact that those blows left him almost lifeless on a tree, dangerously leaning towards a fall that could very well break a bone or two. Shikamaru was supposed to save Naruto. He didn't expect the boy in need of rescue would be the one giving the most trouble. If that was any way of being kind, he had no idea what to expect from him from then onwards. After a few minutes, the black pineapple-haired boy was finally able to sit up at the cost of painful efforts. He knew it would take another long while before he'd be up for another chase. As he looked towards the direction he had last seen Naruto, he could only think of one thing. Stupid Naruto! This is such a pain in the ass. Naruto didn't know for how long he had been moving since he had left Shikamaru's company. It could have been a couple of hours, maybe more. All he knew was that it had been at top speed and that now, he was tired. Even his legs started to hurt. He wanted to stop, but couldn't. Wasn't this the exact reason Shikamaru had caught up to him in the first place? If he hadn't gone to sleep that time, but he didn't get caught by the lazy shinobi anyway, so he didn't blame himself too much. His thoughts remained on Shikamaru. Why was he the one they sent after him? That didn't make sense in the blonde's mind. Even though he acknowledged his strength, there was no doubt for he that he was a better than the lazy ninja. After some time pondering on the matter, he figured they must have sent him in order to get the better of him by using a friend to drop his guard. He had to admit it was pretty smart of them, but fortunately they didn't know him that well to have sent someone not even part of Team 7. Had they sent Kakashi, things would have been different. He decided to take a break when he felt that pushing himself further would impair his fighting abilities. He did so because the encounter with his comrade left him with the impression that eventually more pursuers would come. He used the shadow clones technique, and sent his replicas in various directions while he sat down on the tree branch he stopped on, his back leaning against the tree, and started taking deep breaths. He got up after recovering somewhat. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten in days. He didn't know what he could give in exchange of bowl of ramen. The clones came back, nothing suspicious in the vicinity. Sighing of relief, he found the current time perfect to plan out his next move. So far the only thing he knew was that he wasn't welcome in Konoha anymore, and his natural reaction was to run away. Did that mean he would have to give up his dream, let alone being a ninja? Would he be able to find refuge in the neighboring countries? The question that really got to him, however, was the most simple. Did he really want to leave Konoha? He thought he had found the answer, but then strange white feathers started to rain. He tried to pick one up. The white feather simply vanished upon contact with his hand. Naruto got up. This was surely the work of another ninja. He tried to survey the area, but to no avail. Even worse, he had now trouble keeping his eyes open. This was surely the result the jutsu being used. He would have to investigate after his nap. The blonde woke up to a bumpy feeling, the unpleasant sensation of being carried. He opened his eyes and looked around him. To his left was a skinny-looking ninja. He was rather short, with dark brown hair and wore glasses. The one who was currently under him was a dull-looking ninja. His face was partially hidden by the hood he was wearing, so Naruto didn't have a view of his traits. Both their headbands had the familiar leaf symbol on them. Naruto tried to move, but his hands and feet were tied. Finally realizing his situation, the genin started squirming in every direction while shouting threats and demanding that they let him go, or at least answer his questions. This lasted until the corpulent-looking ninja grew tired of his annoyance and delivered a solid blow to the kid's sternum using his shoulder. As Naruto gasped for air, the other shinobi warned him. "You'd better calm down now, you're even starting to get on my nerves." "And what if I don't?" he asked defiantly. "Ha! Not a problem. Our task was to bring you back to the village dead or alive. Though Lord Genta specially asked that you be brought back alive, I don't think he mentioned anything about not breaking all of your bones." When he heard this, Naruto finally calmed down. "Good, I knew you'd see things our way. How did you find me so fast? And why are you after me?" "I'd be ashamed to call myself a hunter nin if it took me longer to find a runaway genin, boy," he said with a laugh. The other ninja, who up until now had remained silent, decided to join on the conversation. "Seriously, Ryuhi, you'd think a monster like him would have put up more of a resistance, or something. Actually, I'm glad it was that easy. Knowing you, Akira, you probably would have gone overboard." "You don't say." His tone was bitter and sarcastic. Naruto was perplexed by Akira's comments. "What's his problem?" he asked the skinny ninja. Ryuhi smiled. Even in this peculiar situation, that kid still had the guts to be rude and idiotic. Admirable. "His problem is you, actually." "Huh? What did I do to him? I don't even know the guy, you know." "You killed my brother," said Guy replied. Naruto was quickly overcome by guilt. Could it be that there were casualties the day he left Konoha? "When was that?" he asked carefully. 13 years ago. 13 years ago. I don't even think I was born then. How would I be able to kill your brother?" "Shut up, you can't fool me. All of us know who you really are, monster." Again Naruto saw that familiar glare. That look always told him that he was condemned to be alone, hated by the rest of the world. He really couldn't comprehend why he was being blamed for something a demon did so long ago. He was Naruto, damn it, not some demon fox. He suddenly remembered Gaara and felt stupid. He had told the Sand Village genin about the people who understood him and accepted him. Turns out they simply didn't know the truth. He'd apologize to him next time they met, but for that he'd have to escape his current situation. He contemplated the idea of unleashing the Kyuubi on his captors. Who cared what would happen to them? He did feel bad for that Ryuhi guy. He had been a nice guy, although he was sending him to his doom. Unfortunately, he could feel Akira's body stiffen under him, and when he looked at his partner, he was on alert. Could they have already figured out his intentions? He was already devising another escape plan when Akira cried out. "Whoever you are, we know you're following us. Show yourself." "Heh, how troublesome." Naruto recognized the expression before he even identified the familiar voice. So, Shikamaru had finally caught up with his team, huh? He frowned. Now escaping would be even harder than before. The Nara kid showed himself, but instead of the relief he expected from the hunter nin, there was surprise instead. "That headband, you're from Konoha," reasoned Ryuhi. "So what if I am?" "What do you want with us, kid?" asked Akira. "I just want to do my job." "And what that got to do with us?" "Nothing, except for the fact that you're holding my partner captive." "Nice story," complimented Ryuhi. "Do you really think that we'll believe you, though?" "Well, the fact that I'm doing this the easy way should be proof enough. If I wanted to do this the hard way, I'd have already left with my friend there." "Oh really?" As Akira said that, his partner tried to reach for his kunai, but he couldn't. Ryuhi called for his comrade in vain. Akira was in the same situation. Amongst the confusion, Shikamaru's voice could be heard. Shadow biting technique. Success. The hunter Nin immediately identified the jutsu. Shadow biting? How can this be? I didn't even see you use any hand signs. Well, of course you didn't. You couldn't see me in the first place. As he said that, his clone disappeared in a puff of smoke while the real Nara appeared. While you guys were focused on my clone, I had my shadow circle you from the various shadows of the trees in order to get you from behind. By the way, you can move now. Seeing he could move again, Ryuhi immediately reached for his kunai. Akira threw Naruto from his shoulders and readied himself as well. As for Shikamaru, he reached for the scroll he had taken from Genta and showed to them. I was afraid something like this might happen, so I asked for the scroll as well. An S-rank mission, concluded Akira after taking a glacé at the seal on the scroll. Yeah, do you really think they would have sent me alone on such a high-ranked mission? Care to explain why we were sent after the brat then? Well, that idiot left the day before the departure. And since he is who he is, they probably thought it would be cautious to send reinforcement in case, the demon broke free. Akira snorted. Makes sense, I guess. You can't be too careful with a bastard demon like him. Sure you want to team up with him, though? He's a pain in the ass, but I'll manage, I guess. Meanwhile, Ryuhi had taken the opportunity to open the scroll to make sure it wasn't a fake one. He suddenly burst in laughter. The young Nara asked for an answer, but all the hunter Nin did was give the scroll to his partner so he could read it. After a while, a smirk appeared on his face. What? What's so funny? Asked the boy. So it's that mission, eh? I guess they were right to pair you up with the demon. You'll need all the help you can get, if you want to survive this, I mean. So, what kind of mission is it? It was our first hunting mission, replied Ryuhi. With that said, the hunter Nin gave the scroll back to Shikamaru and made their way back to Konoha. Meanwhile, Naruto was still tied up, but he had managed to sit up. He didn't hear what Shikamaru and the hunter Nin were talking about. All he figured out was that they were talking about a scroll. When his captors left, he figured Shikamaru was going to take care of him. He smiled. It would be easier for him to get away. His mood changed when his former comrade drew a kunai from his vest. Naruto feared the boy's task had now become a dispatch mission. To his big surprise, Shikamaru simply cut the ropes that were restraining him. Naruto got up, massaging his wrist. He was confused. Why are you doing this? Didn't I tell you before? It's to help you. Naruto smiled bitterly. Sorry, but do you really expect me to believe that? Since people learned that I had the demon fox sealed inside of me, everybody hates me. I don't have a place in Konoha anymore. Shikamaru let out a sigh. Naruto, you're an idiot. What? Isn't your mission to protect Konoha as Leaf Nin? Wasn't it you that defeated Gaara in order to do so? Do you think that headband only identifies you as a ninja? Listen to me, as long as you continue to do what you always did, and as long as you wear that headband, you're as much a part of Konoha as I am. Shikamaru. But if you really think that you're not part of Konoha anymore, if you truly want to leave, I'll have to ask you for that forehead protector. Naruto took out his Hitaite and looked at it closely. He remembered when he first got it, the pain, the tears, the rage, and the pride, a day he'd never forget. Reviewing that memory made him notice that Iruka had known Naruto's secret from beginning. Actually, the same could be said for Kakashi as well. And now Shikamaru was in front of him, trying to help him despite knowing the truth. He felt relief beyond what he had thought possible. I'm sorry, but I can't give this up, it's too important to me. This is everything I stand for, this my promise to become the Hokage. It's my Nindo and my identity all in one. That's great, said Shikamaru, one problem though, a missing Nin can't become Hokage. And since you stupidly ran away like that. What? No way. Shikamaru, you've got to help me. Relax, I'm just kidding, it's all taken care of. Not funny. I should be the one saying that. I had to run after you for 2 days straight without sleeping just to caught up with you. And for what? Just to get punched in the gut. Because of that you got captured and I had to run yet another day without sleeping just so I could get you out of your mess. Talk about a pain in the ass. Oh, said Naruto after remembering what had happened during their earlier meeting. Sorry about that, he. So what do we do now? But Shikamaru didn't say another word, and without warning simply fell on his back. Worried, Naruto hurried to his side only to hear a light regular snore coming from the collapsed shinobi. Running after Naruto for 3 days straight had really taken its toll on Shikamaru. The blonde genin smiled warmly at his friend. The sun wasn't gone yet, so there was no need to prepare a fire. Since Shikamaru was sleeping, he would have to stay awake and be on watch duty for a little while. Small price to pay for the trouble Shikamaru went through to help him. Thanks, Shikamaru. Shikamaru? Mind telling me where we're going again? For the 5th time, Naruto, we're going to a remote village near the country of lightning. It had only been a day since the two had been traveling together, and already the blonde dobe was testing the limits of the Chunin's patience. The genin kept asking questions Shikamaru had clearly answered when he first informed Naruto of their current situation. After writing a message to Kakashi informing him of his intentions, the young Chunin proceeded to shed some light on the events that led to Naruto's short-lived self-imposed exile as well as his own troubles, except for his promotion, as he wanted Choji to be the first one to hear the news. It seemed the Kyuubi holder had no trouble realizing that Genta was a threat, though he had no idea why the man was after him, nor did he question the Nara's actions up until now. The reason why Naruto was currently questioning their current plan was beyond him, though. But what does that have to do with our mission? Nothing at all. Then why are we going there? Well, it's specifically because this village has nothing to do with our mission that we are going there. The mission was simply a pretext to prevent you from being hunted as a missing nin. We'll go from village for a couple of months and then return back to Konoha to abort the said mission. Oh, Naruto kept silent, however a glance could tell Shikamaru that Naruto wasn't done with him yet. Shikamaru. What? His voice sounded tired. Exasperation started to creep through his face as well. Is it an official mission? Yeah, it is, or else I wouldn't be able to fool the hunter nin. So, let's just complete the mission. We'll be even more credible, right? The black-haired boy felt his whole body stiffen at this ridiculous proposition. A newbie Chunin and a genin taking on an S-ranked mission was the equivalent of suicide in his mind. The young Nara was going to explain that to his comrade when he remembered Naruto didn't know anything about the mission. Heck, even he didn't know the specifics. All that he read and mattered to him was that this mission had no time limit, and could be aborted if it appeared impossible to accomplish after a certain time. He had also learned the day before that they were hunting a criminal from Naruto's captors. This was enough information for him to know he didn't want to tackle this task. No, he said bluntly, we're not doing this mission, end of story. But why? I haven't had a mission for almost a month now, whined the genin. This mission is way out of our league. Come on. It can't be that bad. It's an S-ranked mission that many Umbu aborted. Even the hunter nin that were after you couldn't pull it off. Besides, the person who gave us this mission is Genta, replied Shikamaru. Genta, the same bastard that sent those guys after me? That Genta? Yeah, and seeing he doesn't like either of us, it might be a good idea to lay low instead. Naruto, having nothing to say to that, remained silent. Shikamaru breathed a little easier. While not spending as much time with him as Team 7, the genius had more than enough time to learn how stubborn Naruto could be during the time they spent in the academy. He was the only student who ever made Iruka throw multiple tantrums in an hour as far as he knew. Having that in mind, he had expected the airhead to make a more vivid opposition. Fortunately, that wasn't the case, or at least, that what he thought. It seemed his new teammate wasn't done with the issue. Shikamaru, we're going to do it. Naruto, didn't just hear what I said about the danger, and the S rank and the obvious trap, and did I mention it's an S rank mission? I know that, even more reasons to try. I know that Genta guy is behind everything, right? But if we actually complete this mission, even if he wants me dead, he'll have to acknowledge my use to the village. If he still wants me dead, then I'll at least know his motives aren't protecting Konoha. If that's the case, I'll do whatever it takes to bring him down. The Chunin tried to argue and raised a finger disapprovingly, only to lower it in silence. He took a moment to think of answer, tried to speak up, but still no words came. Finally, he made a weird expression. He had a smile that looked like scowl and eyes filled both with amazement and depression. You're actually right, it would be better to try to complete this mission, he said, still not believing that he had agreed with him. Not only his suggestion was valid, it was the best way to go on the long run. Genta was powerful, but even he couldn't control all of the council. If they could get Naruto on the good side of the board as well as the eventual Hokage, he and the blonde genin were guaranteed a relative safety. Alright, we'll do it, decided the lazy genius. You're serious? Awesome. I promise you won't regret this. Too late, I already am. This is suicide, you know? Man, how troublesome. I guess all that's left is to take a look at this mission of ours. Meanwhile, back in Konoha. Niji entered Rock Lee's room. His comrade was surprised by his visit, even more so when he noticed the lack of Tenten and Master Guy. Niji? Shouldn't you be training with that youthful energy of yours? And how come you're alone? I came to ask you something. Noticed anything peculiar these last days? No, not really. Everything is quite peaceful around here. My thoughts exactly. Lee tried to figure out what his friend was getting at. The only incident he was aware of was about the Uchiha. He had been here for a couple of days, which granted Lee the fortunate pleasure of seeing the beautiful Haruno Sakura wait Sasuke and Sakura. Naruto, concluded the injured Nin. Have you seen him? No, which is odd. My youthful friend would be quite happy to see Sasuke in bed to gloat over him, yet I haven't heard anything from him. I feared as much. What about Shikamaru? I heard he came to talk to Haruno and the Uchiha the day they were brought in. Indeed, and lucky for him he hasn't come back since. What do you mean? He angered my beautiful blossom, said the green beast of Konoha, the fire of passion in his eyes. Even if I'm wounded, it is my role as a gentleman and as Sakura's protector to ensure that this most foul deed does not go unpunished. Niji found the whole event odd, besides Lee's natural weirdness. Sure, he did notice the genius had misogynistic tendencies after seeing Shikamaru's fights, but he also was smart enough not to voluntarily provoke people. He inquired about the said event, but Rock Lee had no answers to give him. He thanked his partner and exited the hospital. Next stop, the Team 7 training grounds. Kakashi must have had an idea of what was going on. Surprisingly, he met his cousin on the way to the grounds. Hi Lady Hinata, it's a surprise to see you in this part of town. Ah. Niji. I was just I guess I got lost, said the shy, and now tomato red girl. Are you going to see Captain Kakashi? Seeing that it was useless to lie to her cousin, Hinata simply admitted the truth. Niji told her about his own worries and about Shikamaru's concern for Naruto. He then went on to ask Hinata when she noticed Naruto's absence. Naruto usually goes to Ikamaru's ramen every day at noon, 3 and 7 o'clock. He hasn't been there for 5 days now, so she then noticed how Niji was looking at her. He looked both surprised and disturbed. Is something wrong, Niji? Lady Hinata, are you perhaps stalking Naruto? What? I'd never do that. That'd be rude, and I just kind of see him on my way to meet the rest of my team. I see, in any case we should drop by his house to see if he's there. He's not. Nobody has been near his apartment for days. It wasn't until she saw Niji's amused smile that she realized her mistake. She let out a small shriek and put her hands in front of her mouth. If she could have been more embarrassed, she'd probably die. Meanwhile, Niji opted to focus on other matters. Promising his cousin to keep her stalking habits a secret, Niji rushed to training grounds, followed by a now mute Hinata. The Hyuga prodigy was glad to find that Kakashi was not sent on a mission and was indeed with the rest of Team 7. However, as he opened his mouth to greet the esteemed Jounin, he didn't hear his own voice. Hey, Captain Kakashi. Kiba. Hi sir, mind if I borrow you Naruto for a while? Looking around, the dog trainer noticed Niji's presence. So you're also here for a rematch, Niji? The kid from the Inuzuka clan was accompanied by Shino, who had nothing better to do that day. Immediately the tension rose. Either of them had forgotten what the Hyuga had done to their teammate. The culprit simply shrugged. Something the matter? Yeah, maybe Hinata is a sweet and forgiving girl, but I'm not. After I'm done with Naruto, I'm coming after you. Be free to do so. I could always use the warm-up. Why, you son of a... While I do find all this drama mildly entertaining, and judging by the fact he was still reading his book, none of the people present couldn't help but feel Kakashi was being sarcastic. Maybe you should wait for me to answer your question before ignoring me and arguing with your fellow shinobi, preferably elsewhere. I am in the middle of something here. Kakashi, sir, sorry. I suppose you're also here about Naruto? He said, finally showing his well-covered face. Everyone present turned around to see the newcomer, who was none other than Choji. The corpulent kid nodded while eating his chips. As for Kakashi, he sighed. He currently wished he was the one risking his life with Naruto instead of covering up for him. Well, Naruto is currently on a special mission right now, so I can't talk about it. He'll be back soon though, so nothing to worry about. They could tell from his eye that he was smiling. At this announcement, Team 8 left the grounds. Obviously everything was normal. Those who knew better and didn't want to worry the others needlessly, namely Choji and Niji, stayed behind, their questions only being half answered. It seems that these two would be harder to convince than the others. Captain Kakashi, said the Hyuga, A couple of days ago Naruto was involved in some kind of incident, and I haven't heard of him ever since. Shikamaru noticed this as well and I haven't been able to contact him either. I'm just wondering if there's something wrong. I see, and what about you, Choji? I just want to know how Shikamaru is doing. Seeing Kakashi's eyebrow rise, the Akimichi explained himself. I knew Shikamaru had left about a day after he did. Things like that can't slip past us. Being probably the most laid-back ninja of Konoha. Or maybe not. It could be you. Kakashi couldn't choose between being offended because he just had been called lazy or because Choji had compared his legendary laziness to that of an amateur like Shikamaru. There are few reasons he wouldn't be in his usual spot, so I figured he set out on a mission without telling me anything, and that meant he probably is on an urgent mission. I know he had been worried over Naruto these past days, and Asuma confirmed my suspicions so. The Jounin was amazed by how much Choji knew his best friend. He confirmed that the lazy genius was indeed with Uzumaki Naruto on a mission that had a direct relation to the incident mentioned by Niji. He assured them both were fine as he told them about the report he received from Shikamaru earlier today. This new answer pleased both the Akimichi and the Hyuga, and both were on their way. And now for the hard part, thought Kakashi as he heard the voice of his pupil. Kakashi, what are you doing? The Jounin turned around to face the Uchiha survivor. He and Sakura had been here before the other teams to ask the same questions. The Jounin knew he'd have to tell Team 7 about Naruto sooner or later. He just didn't expect it would be on the same day Sasuke had left the hospital. And most of the Konoha 12 had come straight to him for answers too. Definitely not a good day. Well, Sasuke, I'm informing them of Naruto's current situation. The boy's frown had gotten uglier, sign that he was rapidly losing patience. I heard that. I'm not an idiot. What I don't understand is why you didn't answer me when I asked you the same question. Well, I didn't want to upset you with this. You were in the hospital just a couple of hours ago. The Uchiha prodigy wasn't convinced. His captain could have very well given that info to Sakura. The fact that they had been kept completely in the dark during his stay was hiding something deeper. Most of all, jealousy was eating him alive. Naruto had been sent on a mission without him, accompanied by a nobody no less. As for Sakura, she hadn't uttered a word since the beginning of the argument. For some reason she could feel a tense atmosphere and didn't want to get into any sort of trouble. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the way Captain Kakashi was acting was disturbing her. Still, there's something you're not telling me. Naruto would have never left without a word. Discreet is an inexistent word in his vocabulary. Actually, he shouldn't have. Isn't what teamwork is all about? Suddenly Sasuke backstepped. He looked at Sakura. She was frozen, looking at her captain with a certain degree of disbelief. The raven-haired concluded she had felt the same thing he did. It had lasted less than an instant, and it wasn't quite the killer intent they had experienced in the forest of death, yet it wasn't a harmless glare either. At any rate, he felt like something bad would happen if he wasn't careful. Problem was he had no idea what had caused this sudden outburst of anger. Fortunately, Kakashi explained himself. I would advise you to refrain from using words like teamwork. The Jounin sighed. He had overreacted. He suddenly felt very tired. He didn't want to be here longer than necessary. Looking at his pupils now, he felt like he had failed them, the sentiment being reinforced by the fact that one of them was currently in a very difficult situation. Kakashi told them in detail about Naruto's situation. Both Genin's eyes grew wide when they learned Naruto had fled the hidden village. They were even more surprised to hear the council's behavior on the topic. But why would the council do that? Naruto is a shinobi of this village. Sakura was now filled with worry for her teammate. He'll be alright, won't he? If he was anybody but Naruto, I'd be hopeful to at least see him come back to Konoha safe and sound. Knowing his current position though, I wouldn't be surprised if he attempted to complete the S-rank mission by himself if he had to. He wouldn't so foolish to attempt something that crazy, answered Sasuke, but he wasn't sure of his statement. Kakashi's eye looked at him without a trace of emotion. The Uchiha's answer had left him a tad bitter. Really, now? I thought you, out of anybody in Konoha, would be able to understand the crisis he's currently facing. Let's look at it together, shall we? He was betrayed by the only people he considered family and got almost killed by the people he trusted. Doesn't it remind you of something, Mr. Avenger? Naruto's teammates remained silent. They were crushed by guilt. Seeing neither of them was going to talk, Kakashi took this opportunity to speak his mind on their and Naruto's predicament. I'm disappointed in you too. Sakura, you blamed Naruto for a mistake that was clearly this idiot's fault, he said, pointing a finger at the said idiot, who was so shocked by the revelation he didn't even glare back. You let your emotions cloud your judgment at the worst time possible, and as a result hurt Naruto more than this boy's cursed seal could ever have. Sakura looked miserable. She was doing all she could not to cry. It was the second time Kakashi had spoken to them this way, and the reasons were similar, too, however never had he been this harsh. The Kunoichi knew she wasn't anything special compared to the rest of Team 7 and had relied on their support and encouragement in order to move forward. Her captain's disappointment only made things more painful. Of course, she mostly felt awful because of Naruto. The last words she had told him before he left were constantly ringing in her head. While it was true that sometimes he behaved like an idiot, he hadn't deserved her harshness then. Actually, looking back, Sakura noticed how little she had supported Naruto since they had become a team. All the times the blonde kid had been kind and helped her, she had repaid with verbal and physical abuse. Her regrets were sincere. She finally saw how wrong she had been towards Naruto. She made a silent vow to better their relationship when he came back. But there lay the problem. What if he didn't come back? What would she do then? The thought sent shivers down her spine. Meanwhile, Kakashi shifted his attention to his other pupil. Sasuke, I don't know what's gotten into you. Had you taken the time to actually think things through, Naruto wouldn't be in this mess right now. And I had warned you about being consumed by greed and anger too. Sasuke couldn't even lift his head. Kakashi was right. The one who understood Naruto the most besides his captain was him, and yet he had let something stupid come between them. Naruto was currently the one person he felt close to, one of the few people who were in a situation to understand him. They had both suffered and were alone in the world. They were both strong, and although he didn't want to admit it too loud, he liked having such a great equal pushing him to refine and surpass his skills. He was one of the only people he wasn't ashamed to call a friend most of the time when he was in a good mood. He was troubled by Kakashi's little rant. Why would they want to harm Naruto? The kid wasn't dangerous. If anything, he had too much wasted potential. The Uchiha was also mad at himself for not noticing anything sooner. Of course, Naruto wouldn't feel special about his power. Knowing him, he must have hated relying on a power that wasn't his own, forced to go on a path he didn't choose. He could relate now, but it was too late. You should be thankful. If Shikamaru hadn't been around, who knows what might happen to Naruto. He gave his all to protect a fellow shinobi even when his own situation would be something to worry about. You, on the other hand, let down your teammate for no good reason except your own selfishness. I hope you're proud yourselves. After a silence that seemed to last an eternity, the captain of Team 7 announced their new plan of action. As of now, until further notice, there will no more training. Sasuke looked at the Jounin in disbelief, but he slowly lowered his head when Kakashi stared right back. You are free to seek help from another instructor, but I wouldn't count on it if I were you. Things are pretty hectic right now. In the meantime, be ready for anything. We could be sent on a mission at a moment's notice, and there is a small chance that the man behind Naruto's predicament might come after you as well. After that, all we can do is hope that Naruto will make it back here in one piece. Sakura was lost. From what her captain was saying, they would pretty much stay clear from each other unless necessary. She thought that considering the current situation, now would be the best to stick together as a team. When she voiced her opinion, Kakashi gave her an odd look. The pink-haired Kunoichi couldn't tell if the Jounin's eye reflected amusement or sadness. You have no idea how big was Naruto's role in Team 7, do you? With that said, Kakashi left in his trademark puff of smoke. When Sakura looked to Sasuke, wondering what she had said wrong, he was already gone. Whatever it was that eluded her, Sakura had a feeling she was soon going to find out and that she wouldn't like it. Elsewhere in the Country of Fire, Shikamaru was opening the mission scroll in order to get a better grasp of their objective. The number of people that died during the mission rivaled the number of shinobi that aborted after months of search. All in all, more than 30 had tried and failed to do what Shikamaru and Naruto were now attempting. This was all depressing. However, when Shikamaru looked at the name of the criminal, he became white. You got to be kidding me. What? What's wrong? Shikamaru showed the name and the picture of their target. We're going after a Hyuga. Naruto looked closely at the name of their target. He then stared blankly at his partner. So, how is this bad news again? Shikamaru's hand reached for his forehead as he sighed. He had expected a dumb reaction out of Naruto, but this was ridiculous. Had he any idea of what he was getting himself into? Might as well head back to Konoha right now and abort what the genius thought was a death sentence. It wasn't like his teammate had a choice anyway. It was due to the young Nara that Naruto had the leisure to actually accept a mission in the first place. Besides, although he didn't mention this information to Naruto, he was of a higher rank than him, which made him the leader de facto. Still, he thought wise to try and change his mind rather than convince him using any other method. He didn't want to ruin all the efforts given into rescuing him so far. For all he knew, the Uzumaki kid could very well attempt to complete the mission on his own, even if he had no idea where to start. Naruto, who do you think is the strongest person you ever fought so far? Kakashi. No matter how much we try, the rest of the team can't even graze him. I thought as much. Then again, that Orochimaru guy totally kicked our collective asses. I wonder who's stronger between the two of them. When the blonde stopped wondering and looked at Shikamaru, the lazy genius had taken his hands off his forehead just enough so his eyes could throw doubting glance back at the genin. The Chunin then put his hands back in his pockets and looked at Naruto as if trying to gauge him. You fought with the Orochimaru? Yeah, at least that's the name Sakura gave me. And you're still alive? Geez, Shikamaru, are you an idiot? I'm right in front of you, aren't I? How did that happen? The genin, more than happy to show his heroics, told in detail, accompanied by large gestures and even some mimics, how he had first fought against the Sannin summon before taking the battle directly to his opponent. He particularly gloated over the moment where he proudly taunted the Sharingan user while saving his life before fainting. Wait a second, you weren't afraid of Orochimaru, but you were afraid of Gaara? His disbelief was still apparent, but a smile was slowly creeping up his face. The hesitant genin nervously mumbled incomprehensible excuses before shouting, "Shut up! You were as scared as me, you know. How would you feel if a guy talked to you about killing to prove his existence and whatnot?" Relax, I was there, you know. Actually, I'm probably the guy who knows the most about Gaara besides you. But just so you know, Orochimaru is far more powerful than Gaara even in his demon form. What? Which brings us to our next point, Kahaku Hyuga. Now, this guy is recorded in the bingo book. What does that imply? Well, Naruto rubbed his chin and looked like he really was thinking things through. I guess that means that he's a bad guy, right? You have no idea how the bingo book works, do you? This time, instead of sighing, Shikamaru yawned. The more time passed, the less he was surprised by Naruto's lack of knowledge. He sat down and motioned his teammate to do the same. Finding a comfortable position, the Chunin attempted to explain the concept of the book as simply as possible. In principle, every hidden village had its own, a list of the most powerful or dangerous people of the different countries. In the beginning, it served as some sort of bounty hunting list. The most notorious and or dangerous criminals were recorded there along with a relatively short bio as well as of various descriptions. Of course, there were instances where a criminal was too dangerous to be left missing for too long or had simply fled to another country, so the notices were sent to every hidden village and incorporated into their own bingo book. Things changed during the period of the Great Wars, the first being that many war heroes from the enemy countries were added. After said wars, a part of the peace treaty stipulated the creation of a global bingo book, on top of the names already in it. This book was to feature any and every missing nin from then on without exception. Another change that came after the war was that the global version of the book, dubbed the Small Bingo Book, was entirely assimilated into the hidden villages. At first, the higher-ups felt things would be better if the names of active ninjas in the village were removed, but the same people were honored by the mention. Others saw this as a good way to measure their worth against the other shinobi without any need for a fight. It soon became a tradition that the most powerful or instrumental shinobi of the village were mentioned in the bingo book. Furthermore, these names were even added in the Small Bingo Book. Villages used the number of names and ratings coming from a certain village as a gauge of their overall strength. The most important information besides the picture was the threat level. It basically consisted of several ratings along with the various techniques or weapons the criminal used. From this info, the threat level was assigned. It varied from D to S. The rating was mostly based on three important measures being political, battle, and hazard. The first two being self-explanatory, the last one referred to the odds of the criminal or shinobi harming civilians or resorting to inhuman methods to achieve their goal. So basically, said Naruto, the fact that he's in the bingo book means he's very strong, right? Basically, yeah, answered the Chunin. Why he had even bothered with the long explanation was beyond him. Thing is, it's hard to gauge the strength of someone through the threat level alone. So here, there's the bingo book information on the scroll. Look at the battle power, it's rated S, the maximum level. Naruto nodded. So far he understood what Shikamaru was saying, even though he had no idea where his partner was going with this. For the sake of comparison, Orochimaru is also rated S, just because of his Sannin rank. That piece of info stuck in Naruto's mind and jolted it into gear. But that still wasn't enough to get a good grasp of the situation since he had barely fought the Sannin, just as summons. What about Kakashi then? What's his rank? Frankly, I have no idea. I'm thinking anywhere between A and S. So what you're saying is we'll have a hard time beating him? No, Kakashi would have a hard time beating him. What I'm saying, Naruto, is that as we are, we'll be lucky to even hit him once before he totally destroys us. The first thing that went through Naruto's mind was that the statement was ridiculous, and voiced his opinion. Shikamaru shook his head and asked him a simple task: to apply what he had experienced in his fights against Kakashi, and see for himself if he truly felt he had a chance of defeating him. The genin seriously pondered on the subject. He remembered having some confidence when faced against the Jounin for the first time. He had been galvanized by his success at knocking out both Ebisu and the third Hokage. How humiliating had been his lesson! His teacher didn't even lift his eyes from his book. Later Naruto had learned he had lost to a sluggish and totally out-of-shape Kakashi, which really upset him. He knew the current him wouldn't be able to beat Kakashi even if he unleashed his chakra like he did so many times before, and his captain would have probably gone easy on him too. He couldn't even imagine what would happen if he was confronted to someone of equal skill who wanted him dead. A glance at Naruto told Nara that his comrade had at least understood where they stood, and the odds stacked against him. Like I told you before, this is suicide. It would take months of training simply to think we have chance to make him break a sweat. You still sure you want to do this? The lazy Chunin knew he wasn't, so he expected the blonde to ask him for some time to think things through. What he wasn't expecting, however, was for his teammate to bluntly ask for the mission scroll. And what do you expect to do with that? He asked, but knowing too well the answer to his own question, he quickly added, actually no, don't answer that. Shikamaru. I don't need to be a genius to understand what you're going to do when you get your hands on the scroll. Please don't be a hero. Heroes die. Shikamaru, I guess for you this suicide, but for me it's a challenge. Fine, okay, it is suicide. His response had been slightly altered by the way his new partner had cocked his eyebrow, probably thinking he was either crazy or an idiot. Still, I won't run away, and I won't give up, and I certainly will kick the ass of anyone that gets in my way, even if it's that bastard snake face. That's my ninja way. Now that he thought it through, the Chunin had to admit he was more than surprised by the will of his partner. For lack of words, Shikamaru conceded that Naruto was foolishly brave as opposed to being the brave idiot he had always thought he had been. He even startled himself when formulated the improbable hypothesis that Naruto might have a small chance after all. He liked to call this phenomenon the Uzumaki Naruto effect. His confidence and bragging somehow had influence on other people. The genius couldn't really pinpoint exactly how or when Naruto had gotten that kind of charisma, but the results were palpable. People actually believed in him. Heck, look at him, he totally went out of his way to save him, and for what, he still didn't know. But then reason and hope entered a furious battle in his mind. In the end, reason, for which he was secretly rooting for, had mercilessly hacked the limbs out of hope with a chainsaw. He wouldn't give the scroll to Naruto, and after thinking about it, found it didn't matter if he did so anyway. There was not one piece of info pertaining to Kahaku's whereabouts, and knowing Naruto, he guessed he had no idea where or even how to get this kind of information. Not like he knew better, but at least he had an idea of how to achieve those things. Telling that to the blonde proved useless though. He was itching for action, adventure and fighting, ninja stuff really. Despite that, the Chunin felt something was, well off. Naruto desperately wanting to accomplish this mission simply baffled him. There must have been another reason besides Genta for the genin to face such little odds. You're not only doing this because of what the higher-ups of Konoha might be plotting, or just because of your nindo. What's the real reason? Naruto stiffened slightly as he heard the question, but it wasn't so subtle that the Chunin's eyes couldn't pick it up. He tried smiling and came up with another reason but stopped halfway through. Shikamaru had seen through his fake smile and did not even listen to his new excuse. Sorry, Shikamaru, but I can't tell you that. I just have to this, you know? You just have to do this, huh? With that said, the Chunin got up. The blonde watched as Shikamaru fetched his bag in order to check his contents. He stood there for a while, looking at various scrolls and objects that were in the bag while smiling. Most of what was in the bag was training tools and documents. He recognized most of them. Shikako had always tricked him into carrying those when he went on a mission. They both knew he'd never used those in his lifetime and saw the whole thing as somewhat of an inside joke. Needless to say, the irony of the situation wasn't lost on him. Having found what he was searching for, the lazy Chunin came in front of Naruto, and before the kid with whiskers could say anything, he started to present himself, interrupted here and there by the sound of his own bored yawns. The name's Nara Shikamaru and I'm from the Nara clan. I like clouds and the sofa back in my room. I also like things that are interesting. I don't like women, especially Ino and my mom. I don't like working too much either. I want to become an average shinobi sometime in my life. I want to have a wife and 2 children, a boy and a girl. After that I want to retire early enough and spend the rest of my life playing shogi. My hobbies are go, shogi, and I recently picked up something called checkers. I also like watching movies and read books, anything that doesn't require too much effort. What the heck are you doing? Isn't it obvious? I'm introducing myself, now it's your turn. But why are you doing this now? 'Cause it's a good thing to do between teammates. We're probably going to head to our doom very soon, so might as well take the time to know each other until then. You mean? Yeah, I guess. Naruto jumped out and couldn't stop yelling his satisfaction. It seemed the news brought immense relief to the boy, so Shikamaru simply tried to shrug it off as he tried to protect his ears from the noise. When Naruto finally calmed down, he introduced himself. It was kind of simple and included more ramen than the Chunin would have thought. So now what do we do? The plan hasn't changed. We're still heading for that village I talked about. But why? Info gathering for one, but most importantly to train. There's no way we're ready to face Kahaku Hyuga as we are now. We'll train there for a month or two there, and then we'll look for him. The genius was anticipated for some slight protest and had formulated some convincing arguments. What he got was even more approval and enthusiasm. To the genin, training was always an awesome idea, and he didn't have any of those for way too long according to him. Naruto had another reason to train though. He had found that physical activity was the best solution to a troubled mind, and he desperately needed the distraction. Alright. Let's start training right now. On the other hand, the lazy Chunin wasn't ecstatic about having to work hard. He looked at Naruto and wondered if things would work out. While he was your everyday sloth, Naruto was a hyperactive brat, and while he had known that for quite some time, it never got to a point where they actually had to work together. In fact, he had never worked with people brimming with energy before. Ino was pretty laid back if you didn't mention the name Sasuke in front of her. Choji had always walked at Shikamaru's pace. Another reason why they were good friends. Even Asuma was a lazy kind of person, sometimes even more than him. In another set of ideas, he needed to get a grasp of Naruto abilities before they could even start training properly. Fortunately, he had just the thing to start. He took out a couple of sheets from his backpack and handed one of them to Naruto along with a pen. This is a little test Captain Asuma had me pass along with the rest of Team 10. Just write whatever you feel is your current level. Fairly simple indeed. This test was really a stats sheet with blanks all over waiting to be filled. Naruto quickly finished and handed the paper back to Shikamaru. The Chunin looked at the answers and then looked at the kid who had just written it in kind of annoyed fashion. He then took out his own pen, wrote on the same paper and gave it back to Naruto. So, that's what your overall level is. Not very impressive. Actually, Naruto, that's what I think your actually level is, at least according to the 2 fights I've seen. It seems you're overestimating yourself a bit. And what about you? He said vindicatively. How come I don't get to see your sheet? It's too much work filling all those blanks. What? Besides, it's not like you could suggest me anything for training anyway. Because you could, right? Was his sarcastic reply. You'd be surprised. Anyways, I need to verify some of the things you wrote in your file to see if they're true, mainly about your chakra capacity and control. Whatever. He still felt a little dejected. So, how do we do that? Shikamaru had Naruto climb up a tree and hang from it upside down until he dropped. According to his captain, a starting genin could stay like this for at least 15 minutes. The last time he had tried to do so, he lasted 22 minutes, while Choji could go for a half hour. Following Asuma's logic, average Chunin could hang upside down for at almost an hour, and Jounin even longer. More than an hour had passed, and the only signs Naruto seemed to show was that too much blood was going to his head. Having Naruto continue longer was useless. Most shinobi didn't even have half his chakra capacity. After telling him how impressed he was, the young Nara asked Naruto to show him what he had learned about chakra control. The genin cockily showed his teammate the latest exercise Ebisu had shown him. This time his astonishment had been replaced by disappointment. Naruto's training in that department was not as good as he expected. While he could effectively stand on water, his feet periodically sank, so he had to readjust his chakra output all the time. That left trying to fight, or even walk on water, out of the question. Furthermore, he still had to rely on hand signs to activate the control. Overall, his control was subpar. When Naruto came back on shore, Shikamaru asked what he thought was important to being a good ninja and what aspects he wanted to be better in. Of course, it's all of those secret techniques and stuff. I guess hand-to-hand combat is also good. What about genjutsu? No way. Don't need it. Of course. Last question, what's the first thing you do against an enemy? I used the shadow clone technique and I tried to hit him from every possible angle. I should have guessed. By the way, I saw you forgot to fill a blank. What's your chakra nature? Haven't you done the test yet? What's a chakra nature? Never mind. Now that he had done enough info gathering, the young Nara asked the genin to be left on his own so he could think things through. He mostly stood against a tree trying to figure what aspects of Naruto could train, which of those the demon fox container was actually willing to train and the means to do it. From time to time he would look at the various scrolls his father left him, and he smiled when he found what he was looking for. It would take a while, but he'd make something out of him yet. When Naruto came back, Shikamaru looked quite content of himself. So you got everything you need? I think so. Ready to train? I think something is missing. Naruto was squinting his eyes in a familiar, yet annoying way. And what would that be? A name, duh. Since we're a team now, might as well give ourselves a name, right? And a motto, we definitely need one of those. Rock Lee and Guy have that whole springtime of youth thing. Shikamaru blinked a couple of times at Naruto before giving him a conceding smile. However short-lived this team would be, why not have some fun with while they were at it? How about something deep like Sons of the Wind? That sucks. Yeah? Well, I'd like to see you try to come with something better, he said, a little ticked by his teammate tactless answer. Easy, Naruto's awesome A-team. Shikamaru blinked some more before answering, like hell. Why would our team bear your name? Okay, fine, sheesh, I know. How about Team Alpha or Team Zero? Nah, said the genius, really getting into things, not catchy enough. Oh, I got it, Team Oblivion. I must admit I like it, it sounds dangerous. Perfect. Now for the motto. Kicking ass and taking names. Awesome. But isn't that? Yup, that's what Sujiro says all the time. I knew it. That's a great idea. So I guess we're done, right? Yeah, Team Oblivion is now go. Shikamaru looked carefully at Naruto. He couldn't be more excited. He had to confess, that excitement was contagious. He actually looked forward to the training. Wait, scratch that. What he meant was that he looked forward to Naruto's training. He couldn't stop himself from grinning. Training starts tomorrow. Alright. It was a beautiful morning. Of course, it would be impossible to the average Joe to notice this from the middle of one of the densest forests of the country of fire. The huge trees acted as such good filter that one could not see the sky, barely distinguish between night and day. By looking around, however, an artist could be mesmerized by the harmony, lush greens and vivid browns. Unfortunately, Naruto wasn't an artist and beautiful forests bored him as much as waiting for Kakashi usually did. He had gotten up fairly early and had done a couple of exercises, wanting to be in shape when the training would start. But after an hour or so of trying to find something entertaining to do, he decided he couldn't wait anymore and tried to wake up his partner. Come on, Shikamaru, less sleeping, more training. For a brief moment, Shikamaru wanted to know why his mom wanted to drag him out of bed. She knew that it never worked, why did she bother today? But he stopped himself before asking something stupid. Whatever the stuff was he was sleeping on, it definitely wasn't his bed, so the probability that the person currently trying to mess with his sleep was his mother became non-existent. He then remembered all the recent events up until today, that left no doubt in his mind about the culprit of the most heinous of crimes, trying to wake him up. Get up, man. I'm bored out of my mind, let's do something. Damn. I should have mentioned the training would start tomorrow afternoon. The lazy Chunin turned his body around in an effort to shun the boy next to him. With any luck, maybe Naruto would let him off if feigned being a heavy sleeper. The genin resorted to shouting, but Shikamaru had foreseen that option and simply shrugged it off. He was sure of his victory when he heard raging footsteps trailing off into nothingness. Unfortunately for Shikamaru, he forgot that one Naruto's strong points, if one could call it so, was his unsurpassed talent to annoy people. The blonde genin came back, and from the sound the Chunin could make, he was now crouched next to him. The genius simply closed his eyes tighter. No matter what his partner would do, he was ready for him. It was then that he felt something poke his ribs repeatedly before proceeding to do the same to his back. It didn't take more than 30 seconds before the annoyed sleeper suddenly turned around, savagely ripping the tree branch from the genin that brought it back with him. However, this only seemed to please Naruto. There was now no doubt that Shikamaru was awake. He got up and pointed a finger towards his teammate who had taken the time to sit up. Come on, you're awake now. Training. Shut up. You're annoying. By the way, that's some bed hair you have. I hate you. Having now no other choice now than to get up, the lazy Chunin did so and headed for the nearby water source. After the morning toilet, he proceeded to tie his hair by using the river as a mirror. As he fixed his hair in a familiar upward ponytail, he gave his new attire a more careful inspection. He had to admit, his vest seemed to go rather well with the rest of his clothes. Too bad it couldn't come in other colors. Not that green was a bad in any way, but he didn't like having this much color, with him already having black pants and a gray shirt. His thoughts quickly moved on. Fashion was on his troublesome list, partially, or totally, due to Ino's constant nagging on the subject. More importantly, this vest was more obvious than having an "I am a shinobi" sticker planted on his back. He knew that common folk out of the hidden villages had little knowledge on ninjas, but even children at the Ninja Academy knew what this vest represented. He figured that giving the impression that he and Naruto were ordinary people themselves was a good way to avoid trouble and, in the worst case, served to confuse the enemy who was unfortunate enough to underestimate them. He came back to the place where they had set camp and shoved his vest into the backpack. Naruto was carefully watching his teammate actions, always expecting the next one would lead to the start of some sort of training. When it looked like the fun would actually begin, however, he started to doubt his new partner. Shikamaru? Can you really train me? The question annoyed the Chunin more than the poking previously had. If you're not sure I have what's needed for this, why did you wake me up? Haha, I guess training is training, right? Whatever. I'm not Kakashi or Asuma, so of course you won't get the best training. But I can do one thing better than they ever could. Really now? Said the genin, squinting his eyes. I can show you your weaknesses and tell you what you need to work on. This was enough to fire Naruto up with anticipation, but that quickly turned to anger when Shikamaru sat down again, going through his backpack. What are you doing now? Aren't we supposed to be training or something? Yeah, just this question then. What's the nature of your chakra? What's a chakra nature? The Chunin noted that it was the exact same answer he had heard before. He seriously wondered what he had learned at the academy, suddenly remembering that he hadn't learned anything worth mention either. Most of what he learned came from his dad or Captain Asuma. He thought about explaining the concept in depth, but he remembered the bingo book and tried to keep things as simple as possible. What do you know about the elements? Not much. Okay, let's start with that then. There are 5 principal elements: earth, fire, water, wind, and lightning. They lie at the basis of most phenomena occurring in our lives. They're so important that the 5 most powerful countries are named after those elements. Okay, and what does that have to do with me? You'll notice that most offensive jutsus have to do with elements. Sasuke's fireballs or his new lightning techniques are a good example. Awesome. But wait, does that mean that I can't learn a technique if I don't have a chakra nature? Well, you could say that. There are some elemental techniques that most shinobi can learn to perform even if they don't have the element in question, but they won't be able to master them or learn the more powerful jutsus. Okay. So, in other words, they're important if I want to be a better ninja. Well, in that case, isn't it better if I master them all? Shikamaru went on to explain how hard it was to master one element to begin with. The first element a student mastered was usually the one the shinobi was aligned with, and therefore the easier to master. Mastering a second element was so hard that even most jounin hadn't done so. Now, in order for him to improve, one of the most pressing matters was finding Naruto's chakra nature, since Shikamaru already knew his. So how do you do that? Well, usually we use special chakra sheets to easily determine the affinity, since it instantly reacts to the smallest sign of chakra nature. Unfortunately, I don't any in my bag. Ah man! What do we do now? You're talking about all this cool stuff and I can't even learn it. This sucks. Well, there is another method. I didn't consider it because it's kind of a hassle. But we have no choice, I guess. Alright. So, what do I have to do? First, Shikamaru had to make sure Naruto could draw out chakra around his hand at will. When the genin had reached satisfying results, the Chunin asked him to put his hand on the bark of a tree and release violent bursts of chakra through his hands. The genius looked at the results and concluded that demon container didn't possess a fire affinity. Burn marks would have appeared on the tree otherwise. Next, they went by the river and found a spot where the current was almost non-existent. Under the instruction of his partner, Naruto dipped his hand in the water and proceeded to draw out chakra like he had previously done with the tree. His teammate shook his head, mentioning that bubbles would have meant the genin's chakra nature was water. The next target of his chakra bursts was Shikamaru. He would feel a shock if Naruto's affinity was lightning. The Chunin reluctantly offered his hands and felt relief when there was no trace of the unpleasant tingle. Well, up next is earth nature. Okay, what do I do? Hit the tree with a chakra-enhanced fist. You sure about this? Trust me. Naruto wrapped his hand in chakra and punched the tree with all his might. The results were painfully obvious. The Chunin couldn't help but smile as he saw Naruto rubbing his poor hand. That hurt. Of course it did. If it hadn't, it would mean that you're also Earth type, and seeing you already have a wind affinity, things would get odd. Wait a second, we haven't even done the wind test yet. Actually, we did. Remember the first test we did? Yeah, what about it? Look at the place where you put your hand. It's not very obvious, but if you observe carefully, you can see small cuts here and there. Oh yeah, you can. Wind cuts, in other words, your affinity is wind. Alright. He threw a fist towards the heavens with a victorious smile, but his expression quickly changed when he saw his bruised hand. Wait a second. That means you knew all along. I punched that tree for nothing back there. Took you a while to figure it out. Anyway, that'll teach you to poke me awake, he replied with amusement. I hate you. Shikamaru explained Naruto that he would need to train in order to master his nature. While they were on the subject, the genin asked his partner what was his chakra nature since he used shadow jutsu. Shikamaru replied that some disciplines like medical technique and most of taijutsu did not rely on nature manipulation. The same could be said for his shadow biting. Not wanting to dwell on the subject further, and admit his knowledge was limited on the arts of his own clan, the lazy genius led his teammate towards a clearing and challenged him to a fight. The blonde was ecstatic, finally some ass kicking. But there's a stipulation, no ninja arts. What? There's something I want to show you. The kid agreed. It didn't change the fact that he was stronger than Shikamaru. The genin patiently waited for the signal to launch himself at his opponent. He jumped and threw a punch that was easily dodged. He landed near his target from where tried a missile drop kick that missed as well. He quickly got up and threw a flurry of punches and then mixed it up with some kicks here and then. It took him around 10 minutes of vain effort until he stopped to catch his breath. What's wrong? Tired? Shut up and stop dodging, damn it. Why? It's not like I enjoy getting hit, you know. Anyway, I guess you can see for yourself one thing you could work on. You rely too much on your clones when you fight at close range. And that's a bad thing? The genius answered by telling Naruto that focusing too much using shadow clones resulted in him neglecting his own close-range training. While this wasn't really a disadvantage due to his stamina, combat training could significantly improve his overall battle prowess. In other words, for an enemy that Neji, Kiba or Sasuke could defeat alone, you'd need 3 or more clones. On the other hand, if could beat that enemy without using clones, I'd be that more dangerous with my clones. I get it now. But you're not bad yourself to be dodging my moves like that. Well, that's all I'm good at. I'm no better than you at attacking. I found learning the various combat styles to much work and asked Captain Asuma to train me to be good at defense. Anyway, that's that for taijutsu. What are your known jutsus? Naruto's known jutsus were the shadow clone, transformation and summoning. He also knew the sexy and harem techniques, but Shikamaru didn't find them useful. The Chunin was impressed. Naruto was a powerful shinobi without even knowing all the genin jutsus. He made a mental note to teach his partner the body switch and body flicker techniques when he could. He'd also have to teach a little about genjutsu, but it would have to wait, for now what piqued his interest was Uzumaki's trademark jutsu. The skill had always intrigued him, and now was a good time to have some of his questions answered. Naruto, how many clones can you make? I dunno, I can make as much as want, but I can make about 20 without feeling like I'm wasting chakra. Didn't you say you summoned 1,000 of them in your fight against Gaara? Naruto's mood darkened somewhat. Back then I relied on the Kyuubi's power. I don't want to use his power anymore. Shikamaru found wise to immediately return to the topic at hand. So, how do you control your clones? Do you give them orders like the normal clone technique? Not really, they kind of do their own things. I can give them a general idea of what to do at first, but after that what they do is fully up to them. The news shocked Shikamaru. He never would have thought that Naruto's clone could move independently from Naruto's will. They were like summons in that aspect. The Chunin then asked how if Naruto knew when his clones disappeared. The positive answer made him conclude that his own theory about the shadow clones was totally false. He thought Naruto's jutsu was an advanced version of the normal clone technique. The things he learned taught him the two techniques worked in completely different ways. Naruto obviously didn't realize this, but there was much potential behind the technique. Naruto, can your clones use jutsus as well? Yup, that's how my harem technique works. Shikamaru had a feeling he was about to make a great discovery, but he needed one last piece: how much information Naruto could get from his clones. He asked the blonde genin if he could have one of his clones follow him. Naruto wondered why, but Shikamaru said it was a surprise and that the experience would be ruined if he knew what he was going to do. Naruto did what he was asked and the clone followed the Nara heir into the forest. When they were out of sight of the real Naruto, Shikamaru explained the process of the experience to the clone. So basically, I'm going to stab you with this kunai. What the hell? Relax, it's not like it's going to hurt or anything. Oh, right. But why would you do that? Don't worry, you'll get it soon. Ready? The shadow Naruto agreed, and the next moment he was nothing but dust. The Chunin headed back to the clearing, looking forward to the results of his little trial. So Naruto, is your clone still there? No, he's gone. What happened to him? You stabbed him with your kunai? What the hell? Naruto was surprised by what the Chunin had done, so much that he hadn't realized the real goal of the experiment, or how amazed Shikamaru was. That's not really important. What's really important is, how did you know? Ah, that is weird. Shikamaru quickly informed his teammate of his discovery. Whatever the Naruto clones learned, it was also learned by the original. That made the technique very useful as a scouting tool and various information-gathering missions as much as it was useful in combat. No wonder it was a forbidden jutsu. Okay, but what does that have to do with training? Shikamaru thought about the best way to make Naruto understand before answering. Let's say you had to write a sentence 100 times, what would you do? Well, I'd use my clones. Why? 'Cause two people writing at the same time, things get done twice as fast. With 100 clones, I'd just have everybody write the sentence once and I'd be done with it. Exactly. Well, what you just learned does the same thing for your training. Huh? Shikamaru understood he had gone too fast for Naruto and tried again. Let's say you have this awesome new technique you can learn, but for normal people it would take 100 days to do so. Well, in your case, if you trained with one of your shadow clones, the result would be that same as if you had trained alone for 2 days. With 3 of you, it would be like you had trained for 3 days. With 10 of you, 10, and for 100 of you. I'd get 100 days worth of training in 1 day. Oh, I get it now. So if you use my clones, I can learn things super fast. That's awesome. The newbie Chunin asked for some time in order to incorporate Naruto's newfound ability into his new training. A half-hour later, Shikamaru came up with course of action. The first thing Nara did was sent another message to Kakashi asking him to send some equipment to the village they were currently heading to. After that, Naruto's training finally began. His first task, according to Shikamaru, was to refine his chakra control to at least his own level. For that, Naruto not only had to be able to walk on water without sinking, he also had to learn to channel his chakra without using the hand signs. After that, they would head to the village the lazy ninja mentioned, where they would further their training. According to Shikamaru's calculations, it would have normally taken Naruto a month or 2 to reach this level of control. Fortunately, thanks to his extraordinary stamina and his shadow clones, he was making incredible progress in record time. Meanwhile, Shikamaru had Naruto learn the body switch technique. He himself hadn't completely mastered the jutsu, as he still needed to do a hand sign in order to perform it, but for now this was the most useful skill he could teach his teammate. By the time they finally left the forest in order to head to the village, Naruto was capable to perform the body exchange technique on short notice. He was also able to channel chakra without moving and had enough control to walk, run, and even fight over water. He hadn't enough time to revise his fighting methods, but he and Shikamaru worked on some battle formations and tactics. He was even able to surprise the Chunin with some of his ideas. As for Shikamaru, he did not train at all. He kept telling himself it was due to Naruto's training, but deep inside he knew he had just slacked off. He used the time he didn't spend watching over Naruto sleeping or reading his father's studies. Even if he read some of the training scrolls, he only had Naruto's development in mind. The Chunin was torn between two thoughts. On one hand, he was a little mad at Naruto. The kid had made training look so easy it was ridiculous. He was now a Chunin and Naruto was already way out of his league in terms of battle prowess. The genin still lacked refinement in the more subtle arts of the shinobi, like infiltration, but currently Shikamaru couldn't help but feel his teammate would make a better Chunin than him. He was jealous of his remarkable growth and even wondered if he shouldn't ask Naruto to teach him the shadow clone technique. On the other hand, he was quite happy of the current development. If things went this smoothly, Naruto would be doing all the work. All he would have to do was train him properly and maybe assist him here and there. Heck, he defeated a demon-possessed kid with only half the abilities he had planned for him to learn. Maybe defeating Kahaku Hyuga wasn't such a far-fetched idea. He mentally slapped himself. Of course it was a crazy idea. They were up against an S-rank criminal. But seeing there was a 90% chance that he was a close-range user, maybe using this and that according to a certain formation. In the end, Shikamaru seemed to have forgotten one of the most important reasons he wanted to go after Naruto on this mission. He also lacked the motivation that pushed Naruto to always improve. Unfortunately for him, fate had just the thing to drag him out of slacking. Shikamaru and Naruto were finally walking on a normal road. It was a welcome change from the tree traveling they had been doing from the start of their departure. They had finally left the country border. Vegetation was still present, but there was nothing taller than bushes as far as the eye could see. Still the fields were brimming with color, a sign that they were still near the rich soil of the country of fire. Far to the distance, the mountains of Konoha could still be seen if they turned around. Nara's pace was a tad faster than usual. He seemed he wanted to avoid the company of his teammate, who was desperately trying to get his attention. His hands were held together behind his head, and a pronounced scowl betrayed his mood. Naruto attempted to appease his partner, a sheepish smile plastered on his face. "Shikamaru? Come on, don't be like that. I said I was sorry."